Senator Graham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. What would be odd in this committee is for us all not to vote against the Supreme Court nominee, since Gorsuch anyway. So Gorsuch, Alito, Amy Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, not one vote. About this hearing, Judge Jackson has got a lot to be proud of. She's accomplished a lot in her life. She's a good person. I'm sure she's a great mother and very gifted person. She's fought hard to be where she's at in life. I'll vote no. I'm the first time I've ever voted against any Supreme Court nominee. Let me tell you how I got there. Number one, the Supreme Court is different than the Circuit Court. I voted for her at the D.C. Circuit Court level because I'm disposed to do that. And I'm playing a game that very few people play anymore, that if you win an election, I expect you to pick somebody I wouldn't support on the court. That just sort of comes with winning. So I didn't think twice about not voting for her. But now that you're talking about the Supreme Court, you're making policy, not just bound by it. And a lot of my friends on the other side have done this, voted for a person at the district court level, the circuit court level, only to vote no at the Supreme Court level. This nomination had a political moment. President Biden can choose anybody he wants. That comes with winning. He had a lot of qualified African-American women to choose from. To me, saying up front during the election, I'm going to pick a qualified African-American woman is fine. Our folks have done that. Didn't bother me that much. It was trying to make the court look more like America. So he has a political decision he made. I respected that. Now, all of us are in politics over here. Again, I'm inclined to vote for judges of the other side. But this choice of Judge Jackson was really embraced by the most radical people in the Democratic movement, to the exclusion of everybody else. After 4 days of hearings, I now know why the left likes her so much. It became obvious to me why she was their first and apparently only choice. So there are people that President Biden could have picked that would have been in the liberal camp in terms of voting on the Supreme Court, and they could have gotten 60 to 65 votes. The White House didn't go down that road because it feels that they must pick somebody that's more appealing to the hard left. They made that choice, and we'll see how it plays out. So why am I voting no? On our side, we like judges to be bound by the written letter of the law. The immigration case that got to be sort of famous here, let's see, what was it? Make the Road, New York et al. Versus McAleen, was a decision by President Trump and his team to fully utilize expedited removal procedures within the statutory authority granted by Congress. You couldn't have written this thing more clear that it's in the sole and unreviewable discretion of the Secretary to use expedited deportation involving people who've been here 2 years or less. Judge Jackson ruled for the Arabella-funded, supported plaintiff. I think this was probably a tryout for her. And she was overruled by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Not exactly the bastion of conservatism. There could hardly be a more definitive expression of congressional intent to lead the decision about the scope of expedited removal within statutory bounds to the Secretary's independent judgment. The forceful phrase, sole and unreviewable discretion by its exceptional terms, heralds Congress's judgment to commit the decision exclusively to agency's discretion. Well, she took the plain meaning of the statute, set it aside, did legal gymnastics to basically issue a temporary injunction. That, to me, says everything I need to know about how she's going to govern. She wants the outcome, she's going to find it. She's going to get it. Activist to the core. The child pornography cases. Didn't know much about it until we sort of had the hearing. About the way I questioned her, I found if I'd left it up to her, I'd have gotten one answer in 30 minutes. So I don't know how you question witnesses. I interrupt when I think they're being evasive. I let them talk when I think they're answering the question. But this hearing is coming to an end. If you compare this to Kavanaugh, you've missed a lot. I've never complained about Kavanaugh or anybody else being asked a hard question. I have complained about their lives being destroyed by a coordinated effort of Democrats and the mainstream media trying to destroy somebody to keep the seat open. That didn't happen here. So I found her completely evasive. But when you did dig into it, after a lot of digging, you found out something. I found out something that was astonishing. In the area of child pornography cases, it's not so much that she is out of sync with the average sentence, which she is. And Senator Cruz, you did a great job proving that. Senator Hawley, you dug into her philosophy about how you sentence somebody, and I'm glad you did. What I found was that she routinely sets aside 2 enhancement factors when it comes to increasing sentence. She will not, as a general policy disagreement with respect to these 2 enhancements, that is computers and the number of images. She does not hold that against the defendant, the perpetrator. I couldn't disagree more. And if you're a judge out there coming before this committee and you want to get promoted, you have this philosophy, you're going to run into a problem with me. There are 85 million images of children being exploited on the internet. The statute was written to deal with mail, where child pornographers would mail images of children. Along comes the internet, as she said. Now it's so easy in the confines of your office or your home to hit a button and download hundreds, if not thousands, of images, and she felt like that would be unfair to the defendant. I don't. Every time you hit a button downloading an image of a child being sexually abused, I want you to go to jail longer, because every time you hit a button, you're destroying a life. I think she's got this completely backwards. I think you should be enhancing the sentence. The more you download, the more you go to jail. And if you don't do that, we're never going to get this right. And she doesn't hold it against the defendant to go to the venue of choice. I want to deter people from going to the internet and downloading a bunch of child porn by putting them in jail longer, not less. The fact that she took those 2 sentencing enhancements off the table because she thought it'd be unfair to the defendant because it's so easy, to me, she just lost me completely in this area. I'm not suggesting she likes what's happening in child pornography. She's not offended. I'm sure she is. I'm sure she's seen a lot of things that offends her, but she's a judge. She has a chance to deter the crime. She has a chance to impose a sentence that would deter it, and she chose not to. I think that is a terribly bad choice. And this committee, if anything comes out of this hearing constructively, is that we will pass a law changing that, so every judge has to hold it against a child pornographer. The more you download, the longer you go to jail should be the rule. And we should insist that using the internet is a bad thing in child pornography, not a neutral thing. So I'll like to work with my colleagues on both sides to do that. Now, about her being the first African-American nominee before this committee of the Supreme Court, that's true. And the reason that's true is because of what y'all did to Janice Rogers Brown. The only reason that's true is because my Democratic colleagues back in 2005 filibustered for 2 years, 2003 to 5, Janice Rogers Brown, a Supreme Court justice from the state of California that was picked by President Bush to be on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeal, the same court that I voted for Judge Jackson. It's kind of a one level below the Supreme Court. And for 2 years, there was a wholesale filibuster of her. And when it got to be possible for her to be on the Supreme Court as a possibility, then Senator Biden said she would be filibustered. Senator Durbin, Senator Schumer, all filibustered her and told this body that if you pick her, she's likely to be filibustered. That's why Judge Jackson is the first African-American nominee to come before this body to be on the Supreme Court, because you made it that way. Because when you had a chance to support an African-American conservative, you used her ideology against her. You blocked her from being considered by this committee. And we're supposed to be like trained seals over here clapping when you appoint a liberal. That's not going to work. We live in America today where your ideology is held against you if you're a conservative. And when you're a liberal, we're supposed to embrace everything about you and not ask hard questions. That's not the world we're going to live in. And I'll say this, if we get back the Senate and we're in charge of this body and there's judicial openings, we will talk to our colleagues on the other side. But if we're in charge, she would not have been before this committee. You would have had somebody more moderate than this. So I want you to know right now, the process you started to go to a simple majority vote is going to rear its head here pretty soon, where we're in charge, then we'll talk about judges differently.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Senator Feinstein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased that the committee is moving forward with our consideration of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, and I want to tell you why. I find that she's an exceptional nominee with impeccable credentials. She has broad and relevant experience and a clear record of well-reasoned legal decisions from her 9 years on the federal bench. Now, where do I get this? She has been before us 3 times already, receiving bipartisan support to serve first on the Sentencing Commission in 2010, as a federal district court judge in 2013, and as a federal appellate court judge in 2021. She has been tested. And based on her record and the testimony, I believe she's again deserving of full support. She is precisely the type of nominee that senators on both sides of this aisle should want on the Supreme Court. First, she applies a clear and fair method in deciding her cases, has demonstrated a remarkable judicial temperament. She faithfully applies the law in each case. In her 8 years as a federal district court judge, she had the very low reversal rate of only 2%, which is well below the national average. And it's especially impressive because she served on the DC District Court, which hears very challenging issues, many of which end up at the Supreme Court. During the hearings, we heard testimony from retired Judge Thomas Griffith, who was appointed to the DC Circuit by President George W. Bush. Judge Griffith told us that Judge Jackson, and I quote his words, will adjudicate based on the facts and the law and not as a partisan. He testified he had, quote, always respected her careful approach, extraordinary judicial understanding, and collegial manner, end quote. We heard similar comments from representatives of the American Bar Association, judges, attorneys who have worked with her over the course of her career. They testified that Judge Jackson is universally and highly regarded for her intellect, her integrity, her judgment, and her writing and analytical skills. Both prosecutors and defense attorneys have praised Judge Jackson, and I quote, as thorough, hardworking, and extremely well prepared. Judge Jackson is widely respected, and it's clear to me that her colleagues on the bench and the lawyers who argued before her have no doubt that she would make a fine addition to the Supreme Court. So I have no doubt either. It's clear to me that Judge Jackson believes it's the role of a judge to serve as an impartial decision maker. And as a judge, she considers the facts and the law for each particular case that comes before her to arrive in an outcome that's fair and under the law. I am very proud to support her nomination. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. Senator Cornyn.
Justice Robert Jackson famously said that the Supreme Court is not final because it's infallible. It's infallible only because it's final. And I trust that would not be the case if the American people saw the Supreme Court as just another political branch. In simple terms, it means that the Supreme Court is the last word in interpreting and applying our laws through the 70 to 80 cases it decides to hear each year. Mainly because it's seen as an umpire, not as a player. While I view the judicial branch as the crown jewel of our constitutional republic, it has over the years gotten out of its lane on more than one occasion by acting like another political branch. Over the years, the Supreme Court has developed various legal doctrines like substantive due process to create new rights out of whole cloth, rights that are neither in the text nor would the framers ever envision that these rights existed or would be created by 9 unelected judges at the time of the founding. By vesting federal power in Article 1, federal legislative power in Article 1, and then reserving to the states to determine their own affairs, our founders believed that policy decisions must reside ultimately in the people. As senators, we work on our constituents' behalf here in Washington, and every 6 years, they let us know whether we're doing a good job or not. When the Supreme Court blatantly engages in policymaking, it takes away the power of the people to decide for themselves and to hold their government accountable. Agree or disagree with the results of a given Supreme Court decision. Over our nation's history, there's been something for everyone to love or hate, from Plessy versus Ferguson, which established the shameful separate but equal doctrine for public schools, ultimately overruled in Brown versus Board of Education, to Obergefell, which mandated same-sex marriages. When the Supreme Court creates a right that is not even mentioned in the Constitution, the independence and the legitimacy of the Supreme Court itself is called into question because consent is discarded. Legitimacy of our government institutions is something we have always debated in America, and we've even fought a war over it. The Declaration of Independence itself affirms that government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. That very principle is undermined when judges rewrite the Constitution to their liking. Where is the legitimizing consent? President Lincoln stated it another way. He said, "No man is good enough to govern another man without that man's consent." How are these so-called unenumerated rights, you might call them naked to the invisible to the naked eye, how are those rights any different? That is what can happen when unelected judges invalidate state laws and impose a one-size-fits-all policy regime on our entire country. Again, like or dislike the results in an individual case, but we should all be concerned about the legitimacy of our governing institutions when they so readily discard consent of the governed. I view the confirmation proceedings as a way to get back and reflect on first principles, on the role of our judiciary in our constitutional system. President Biden has made no bones about his intention to nominate a Supreme Court justice who has an expansive view of unenumerated, invisible rights. Judge Jackson? Well, she wouldn't answer our questions on this topic. I didn't ask her to prejudge a case or commit to a particular outcome in a disputed area of law, but I did ask her about her judicial philosophy. She says she doesn't have one and hasn't thought much about it. That's simply not a credible response, and I believe demonstrates a lack of candor. Maybe she was overcoached, but I left the confirmation hearings concerned about her approach to unwritten rights. Judge Jackson has a marvelous legal education. She's a charming person. She has a vast practical experience, something I think is a real plus, having served as a public defender, a federal district judge, and a circuit court judge, and not just an academician. Someone of her impressive caliber surely has a judicial philosophy, but maybe she just didn't want to talk about it. Time after time, when we asked about her judicial philosophy, she pivoted to something she called methodology. But let me be clear, methodology is not a judicial philosophy. I'm glad when she tells us that she proceeds from a place of neutrality, but that tells us nothing as to whether she believes that the Constitution has a fixed meaning. The order in which she decides to read the parties' briefs tells us nothing as to whether and to what extent a judge, now quoting Justice Breyer, her mentor, will look to consequences, including contemporary conditions, social, industrial, and political, of the community affected when deciding cases. Now, the main types of contrasting judicial philosophies include judicial activism versus judicial restraint, loose construction versus strict construction, and a living document approach versus original intent. Justice Barrett, for example, called herself an originalist and a textualist, an approach championed by her mentor, Justice Scalia. That would place her in the judicial restraint and strict constructionist camp. In other words, she might be skeptical of invisible or unenumerated rights. For us to fulfill our constitutional duties, we need answers to our questions about how a judge views judge-made law. My concerns were further elevated as I reviewed Judge Jackson's record, and I saw examples of activism bleeding over in her decisions. One of the opinions from her time on the DC court demonstrates the serious concerns I have about her ability to follow the clear letter of the law, as opposed to her personal preferences. Others have mentioned, and I will as well, the case of Make the Road New York versus McAleenan, where the American Civil Liberties Union and others challenged a regulation requiring expedited removal for people who illegally enter our country. The Immigration Nationality Act gives the Department of Homeland Security, and I quote, sole and unreviewable discretion to apply expedited removal proceedings. That does not leave any gray area for interpretation. Sole and unreviewable discretion is about as clear as it comes. But Judge Jackson, who presided over this case, decidedly did not stay in her lane, as she says she attempts to do. She went beyond this unambiguous text to deliver a political win to a progressive group, and in the process entered an injunction barring the use of this important tool that's needed by our Border Patrol and immigration authorities to deter people from violating our immigration laws. Unsurprisingly, as we've heard, her decision was overruled by the DC Circuit Court. I believe this is a clear-cut example, about as clear as you can possibly get, of Judge Jackson ignoring the written law in order to achieve a result that she preferred. There have only been 115 Supreme Court justices in our nation's history. That's why it's crucial that we use these proceedings to understand if a judge will truly stay in their lane, or whether they will attempt to legislate from the bench and deliver what Justice Biden and his Democratic colleagues are unable to achieve through the legislative process. A judge must call balls and strikes, and given what I've seen and her unwillingness to disclose her judicial philosophy and to disavow an expansionist view of unenumerated rights, I have concerns that Judge Jackson will be pinch hitting for one team or the other. I will vote no.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn. Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. What plays out here in this room with Supreme Court nominations is often driven and directed in other places. And the real action is too often off stage in an archipelago of right-wing dark money front groups out to capture the court. That is where the real story lies. When Republicans appoint to the Supreme Court, the selections come out of that archipelago of front groups, paid for by big anonymous donors, what we call dark money. When Democrats appoint to the Supreme Court, their objections come out of that same archipelago of front groups, paid for by big anonymous donors, the dark money groups. We have heard a lot about judicial philosophy during the course of this. Well, if you bring a judicial philosophy to these proceedings, I think we do need to examine it, because the judicial philosophy is so often a mask for predispositions. Originalism works very nicely for you if you'd like to look back before the civil rights movement in making decisions about civil rights. Originalism works very well for you if you'd like to look back before industry regulation at a time when there was no industry big enough to regulate and serve the interests of corporate deregulation. And originalism works very well for you if you want to return to old social norms that society has moved beyond. So let's not pretend that a judicial philosophy is a neutral thing. It is a tool. And when a judge says he or she has one, it's worth looking into. But that doesn't mean you have to have one. There's a group called the Independent Women's Law Center, which, like many of these right-wing front groups, is twinned with another group, which is called Independent Women's Voice. One is the 501c3, one is the 501c4. Their funders are Leonard Leo's 85 Fund and Concord Fund, another pair of 501c3, 501c4 twins at the heart of the court capture scheme. They're also funded by the Koch and Bradley Foundations, who I've talked about before in these proceedings. Indeed, for years, the president of one of these groups was actually a Koch Industries lobbyist and overlapped for a while with Americans for Prosperity, the Koch brothers' huge dark money political operation. And they, on February 24th, before they even knew who the nominee was going to be, sent a memo to GOP Senate members. Ray suggested SCOTUS talking points. Date February 24th, 2022. Here's the punchline. It is therefore important that you focus not on the selection process or on the nominee's paper qualifications, but rather on the need to learn more about the nominee's judicial philosophy. Ask unanimous consent that the memo from those two front groups be put into the record.
Without objection.
The other theme we hear a lot about is how this judge is going to be dangerous for children. And once again, we turn to a right-wing dark money front group as the source for that concern. On the day of her announcement, February 25th, a group called the American Accountability Foundation came out with an investigative report. Now, let's look at the American Accountability Foundation. It shares an address and senior staff with a group called the Conservative Partnership Institute, which employs, among other people, that wonderful Cleta Mitchell as a senior legal fellow. Indeed, the Conservative Partnership Institute is the so-called care of name in the filings of the American Accountability Foundation, and it also shares an address with something called America First Legal. American Accountability Foundation is funded by Donors Trust, which is described as the Koch brothers' right-wing ATM, and the Bradley Foundation, which I've again spoken about before in this hearing in this context. And it was founded by the opposition research director of none other than Cruz for president. So they got right to work the day she was announced. And AAF founder Tom Jones said, after calling her a radical leftist, which I guess they figured out that very first day she was announced, Americans want our judicial system to protect children and citizens from sexual predators. I'm asking unanimous consent that that dark money release be put into the record.
Without objection.
So the continuing problem of these outside groups that are funded by huge interests that hide who's behind them and that exert control when Republicans are in charge in the selection of the nominees and when Democrats are in charge in the objections to the nominees is something that I think needs to be brought to the surface. So I wanted to make that point with those two arguments. I'd also like to point out, just because I've been a prosecutor and seen some of this stuff, and spoken to Rhode Island judges, federal judges about this, I'm told that the two most disfavored guidelines in the entire sentencing scheme are the crack powder cocaine disparity and the pornography possession guidelines. And that's widely accepted throughout the judiciary, which we've heard from many other members of the judiciary. And that would help explain why in so many of these cases, the government actually recommends below the sentencing guidelines. The government, which usually is making the harshest sentencing recommendation, is actually recommending below the sentencing guidelines. It's hard to fault a judge for a sentence below the sentencing guidelines when the harshest participant in the courtroom, the government, is recommending below the sentencing guidelines. And as those of us who've been there know, every judge faces three data points in a sentencing hearing. One is the position of the government. The second is the position of the defense. And by the way, in our system of justice, a judge is pretty much honor bound to give fair consideration to the recommendation of the defense. You can't rule out the defense's recommendation just because they're representing the defendant. They're entitled to an honest consideration of their views. And then there's the probation office, which serves the court and makes its own recommendation based on an exhaustive personal review of the defendant, of the family, of the victims, of the circumstances, and comes up with a sentencing recommendation. And when you look at all three of those data points that a judge has to face, and when you look at the widespread acceptance of the fact that this particular sentencing guideline is widely thought across the judiciary to have a serious problem with it, and you actually look at where these sentences fall in that actual matrix, there is nothing to see here. This is all part of what was cooked up by the former opposition research director for one of our colleagues, this dark money funded American Accountability Foundation. With that, I think it's unfortunate what she had to go through. I think what's really unfortunate is whoever's behind all this nonsense doesn't just stand up and show who they are. Admit it. Show who wrote the check to the Judicial Crisis Network for $15 million or $17 million. It's a pretty big check to write. Who wrote that check to get the ads up on the air for Kavanaugh? Who wrote that check to get the ads up on the air for Gorsuch? Who wrote that check to get the ads up on the air for Barrett? And what business did they have before the court that caused them to write checks that big? That is a mystery that we need to solve. There's been a lot of criticism of dark money on all sides of the panel here during the course of this discussion. Well, everybody's gonna have a nice chance to prove it in the months ahead when we bring up the Disclose Act for a vote, and we're given the opportunity to get rid of this poisonous stuff for once and for all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciated the willingness of Judge Jackson to come before our committee and answer questions. I've enjoyed getting to know her. She seems like a wonderful human being, one who's dedicated to her family. She comes with some impressive qualifications academically and professionally. She's someone who's clerked at all three levels of the federal judiciary, and if confirmed, will have served at all three levels of the federal judiciary. Itself a significant and valuable experience. It is important to understand what kind of Supreme Court justice she would be. And that's why this can't be something that simply focuses on the historic nature of the nomination. By the way, on that point, as to the historic nature of the nomination, earlier today, there was a Politico tweet. Politico sent out a tweet reading as follows, saying, Ketanji Brown Jackson will likely be confirmed as the first Black Supreme Court justice by the end of this week. Here's how we expect it to go. Now, if that were true, that would come as news to the family of Thurgood Marshall. It would come as great news to Justice Clarence Thomas and his family. When we hear, as we've heard today, calls for making sure that we respect the need to show inclusiveness, let's remember how members of this committee have treated others. Let's remember how they treated Justice Clarence Thomas. Let's remember how they're still treating Justice Clarence Thomas. How people on the left are savagely attacking him. One of the most decent human beings. that I've ever known, one of the most decent human beings and brilliant jurists ever to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States, or any court for that matter. Let's remember how members of this committee and people on the left treated Janice Rogers Brown and Miguel Estrada. So if you're going to make it about inclusiveness, let's remember to be inclusive in our discussion of inclusiveness. It's also important to talk about judicial philosophy. There's a reason we talk about that. We talk about it not just because it's jargon that makes us feel good or there's some sort of comfort food. We talk about it because we must talk about it, because that's how we make sure that our government functions as it should. When you have someone serving on any federal court, but especially the Supreme Court of the United States, if they don't have a proper understanding for the limited role of the federal judiciary, for the separation of powers between the three branches, a judicial branch can become very dangerous, in which the will of the people can be thwarted by justices who are not willing to recognize limits on their own power, limits on their own jurisdiction. Judges and justices who can't recognize what they're empowered to do, and that their role is not a policy-making one, but an interpretive one. That's why we ask so many questions about judicial philosophy. For a judge that wants to achieve a particular outcome, for a judge looks at a case from the standpoint of figuring out what result he or she would be comfortable with, then that becomes the judicial philosophy. The achievement of a fair result, of a result that the judge or justice feels comfortable with, is the guiding principle. Judicial philosophy matters also because there are a lot of consequences to having a bad judicial philosophy. Now, when we asked about Judge Jackson's judicial philosophy, when we asked her, when we asked others, we were told frequently that we should look at her record. So we looked at her record. We've got a lot of things in her record that we found concerning, including a couple of cases in which she acted without jurisdiction. The Make the Road New York case is a troubling example of this, as is the AFGE versus Trump case. In both circumstances, she took an executive action taken within the Trump administration, action that she apparently disagreed with, and issued declaratory and injunctive relief to invalidate those actions. And in both cases, she was overturned by the left-leaning U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. These cases haven't gotten as much attention as some of her other rulings, as some of her sentencing decisions, but they're very, very significant. They're deeply troubling to me, because when someone's willing to act when they lack jurisdiction and or when they don't have a valid cause of action upon which to grant that relief, that's someone who's cutting at the heart of the limits on judicial authority and creating a dangerous set of circumstances. So we're told to look at her record, and yet much of what we see from her record is disturbing. We're told to look at her record, and yet we still don't have significant portions of her record on another disturbing line of rulings, those dealing with her sentencing imposed in child pornography cases. Now, she made the argument, and many on this committee have made the argument for her as well, that all judges sentence this far out of the guidelines, as far out of the guidelines as she did in those cases, as if she were somehow within the mainstream of judges on sentencing cases like these. But based on what we've seen, she sentences 47% below the national average. Then just 3 days ago, and over a week after the hearings were concluded, we received the sentencing transcripts from a case where Judge Jackson gave yet another light sentence to a violent child rapist who failed to give truthful information to the court, falsified his address for purposes of requiring a sex offender registry participation. In this instance, the defendant, Mr. Weeks, sexually assaulted another female family member shortly after being released. He then bribed the victim, apparently, into refusing to testify against him. Mr. Weeks would have been in prison and unable to sexually assault his sister-in-law if Jackson hadn't sentenced him below the guidelines range and below the government's recommendation. Now, Judge Jackson insists that her sentences are based on mitigating factors, those articulated in 18 U.S.C. section 3553, and that we could understand that if only we had the record before us. Now, for whatever reason, the White House and the Democrats on this committee aren't all that concerned about making sure we have that record. And in fact, they seem determined to do the opposite of that. And Judge Jackson puzzlingly claims that she doesn't have access to those records, even though it appears that she, through her chambers, got key pieces of that information that could have been drawn from the pre-sentence reports, which we've requested, and sent sensitive information from those reports over to the White House. Well, something doesn't add up here. So when we ask about her judicial philosophy, we're told to look at her record, and yet when we look at her record, what's there is troubling to us, and very often there's a whole lot that simply isn't there. I'm also concerned about her inability or unwillingness to answer certain basic questions. Whether it's in response to whether it's in response to a question from Senator Blackburn, a simple question, what is a woman? To her refusal to respond to my question regarding her views on efforts to pack the Supreme Court of the United States. These are troublingly inadequate answers that she provides because she doesn't answer them at all to very basic questions. Questions that she could easily answer, and the fact that she doesn't and won't and hasn't is concerning. Finally, I'm concerned by her response to Senator Kennedy, echoing former Justice Brennan's philosophy that 5 unelected Supreme Court justices can find new unenumerated constitutional rights. Quote, well, at any time the Supreme Court has 5 votes, then they have a majority for whatever opinion they determine, close quote. That's troubling. Look, the record doesn't support what they say it supports. Even more troublingly, the stuff that they say is supportive of her record, stuff we haven't been given. Why? Why? This is not a vacancy that currently exists on the Supreme Court. There's no reason to rush this. So why not give us access to the documents that we need, documents that she insists maintain and defend the sentences she issued in those cases, very often disregarding, in whole or in part, sentencing enhancements for child pornography offenders. Not just child pornography. Let's call this what it is. This is commercialized. These are commercialized efforts to profit off of child sex torture. Enhancements for computer transmission and receipt, for number of images, for prepubescent victims, and for sadomasochistic conduct carried out in those. Very often dismissing or minimizing those enhancements simply because she disagrees with certain key policy elements underlying them. This is troubling, and we don't even have the pre-sentence reports and the other documents we need to review them. I will vote no.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to start out by thanking you and Senator Grassley for your leadership. Senator Grassley, when you mentioned going home the first day and your wife saying the thing she liked best at the hearing was Judge Jackson's opening statement. Thank you for setting that tone and for sharing that story. And you, Senator Durbin, having to chair this, I was remembering Justice Roberts' line that he was, as a judge, he would be calling balls and strikes. And I was thinking you had to do a lot more than that. You have to call wild pitches and foul balls. And as spring training starts, this is all on my mind. You have to take a lot of curveballs. But what you did for all of us, for both.
Salute to salute to everybody in the chat, man. Salute to everybody in the chat, man. Salute to everybody in the chat, man. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing this morning for this good political theater, man? It's No Love Monday, man. We ain't got no love today, man. It's No Love Monday, man. So we going in. You know, I like to do the courtroom cases, man. This is great. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. We got Latina, Patriot in the chat. We got Willy Wonka. We got King seeing red in the chat. What's up, my good brother? 5.0, 5.0, 5.0. Man, everybody. Who else we got in here, man? Erica, always supporting. Good morning, Erica. Good morning. Thank you for your support. I love you. I love you so much. Erica and Tina came up on the panel yesterday. Miss Lorianne, thank you so much for your support. We here. This right here is the Supreme Court Senate confirmation meeting for Ketanji Jackson. I wanted to show this because, like KNC and Red said, they've been going in on baby girl for weeks. They've been going in on baby girl for weeks. So I had to come in. I had to come in and let y'all see what was happening. And I want to know y'all vote, man. I want to know y'all vote. I want to know what y'all think. Let me know what y'all think today. Get in the comment section. Get in the comment. 5.0, 5.0, 5.0. I'm going to get back to the video. People don't like seeing me. You know what I'm saying? Some of the people who do a lot of my people that come in for the courtroom content, they be surprised when it be a black man with dreadlocks and everything, and my opinions and everything. But this what I look like. This perfect timing. I got locks, I'm black, and I like court, and I'm conservative, and I kind of lean Republican, you know what I'm saying? So I'm showing this because I want you guys to understand political theater. A lot has been happening this week. Tonight, we're going in on Will and Jada, right? I got this show up now. People already taking my content, so we're going in on Will and Jada. Later on, Mental Health Mondays, we're going in on that. Right now, Will and Jada, people have said is a distraction. Right here, the next couple senators who testify, you're going to hear about some things about why Ketanji is actually being nominated and why they are going against her. A lot of people think they're going against her for one particular thing, but you got to pay attention and listen. This is political theater. Biden nominated this person so that he could change the trajectory of America. This is not just about the computer and the pictures. No, this is about the abortion. This is about guns. This is about a liberal court changing America as we know it. And they keep talking about 5 justices changing law. They're talking about taking away your rights, your Second Amendment rights. If this person gets elected to the Supreme Court, they will attempt to take away a Second Amendment right. This is not about the things that you're thinking about. This is political theater. And the Democrats and liberals have an agenda. Capture the court. Look up the Koch brothers, capture the court. Look up what's truly going on. This is political theater. This is not about the kids. This is not about her sentencing down. This is about potentially what she will vote on if she gets on the court. It's not about her being black. They could have had a black woman 10 years ago. This is not about her being a black woman. This is not about racism. They use race to confuse you. They use race and sex to distract you. This is not about her being a black. This is not about her being a woman. Her being a woman and being black has nothing to do with the politics and the optics. Look, you got to think about the optics of this. This has nothing to do with sex and race. Every time that you get distracted by sex and race, you should say, what's really going on? Why do they want me to focus on sex and race You need to ask, what is a distraction? What do they want? What do they not want me to know? What do they really want to? They want us to not focus on a liberal court who will take away Second Amendment rights in this new era. When you have less rights, as richer people get richer, how do you protect yourself if they take away the Second Amendment? If they take away the Second Amendment and this court starts rewriting laws, America is not the country that you thought, but they're not telling you that with this election. They saying that it's about her being black. They saying it's about her being a woman. It's not about her being a black woman. That's why I'm showing the case. It's not about Ketanji being a black woman. Do not get distracted by race. Do not get distracted by her sex. Listen to this next senator and all the things that the Republicans and Americans, conservative, traditional fathers, conservative, Christian, traditional fathers should be concerned about this nominee. It's not about race. It's not about sex. Conservative, Christian, traditional fathers should be concerned about this nominee. If you're concerned about your daughter, if you're concerned about your son, if you love your children, if you love America, you should be concerned about this nominee. It's not about sex. It's not about race. I'm gonna go back to the video. I just had to come. I just had to come and say that. I just had to come and say that because we get confused. It's not about race. I know a lot of people watching me for the first time think he's black and no, I'm conservative. Most times I lean Republican. I am traditional. To be honest, I believe most Americans are conservative, traditional Christian. That's red, white, and blue. That's apple pie. That's America. Traditional conservative. I love my wife. I love my God. I love my family. I love my country. I love my God. I love my family. I love my country. I love my God. I love my family. I love my country. That's America, bro. I'm American. I'm a proud American. I love my God. I love my family. I love my country. This is about real American politics. It's not about race. We gotta elevate, y'all. 5.0, 5.0. We gotta elevate. We gotta elevate.
Both teams was to remind us why we are here. Democracy brought us here. And this isn't just our ballpark or our playing field. This is America's ballpark. This is America's court. And thank you so much for that. On the first day of Judge Jackson's hearing, I talked about how the fact that she was here to open things up. We were literally open things up. This is the first hearing where we've had guests because of the pandemic. And as we emerge from that, we see a nominee, a judge, who will walk into that court with her head held high because she is opening up that court to make every little girl and boy in America to realize that anything and everything is possible. And as Senator Booker so beautifully reminded us last week, this is a moment of joy. She is truly an inspiration to young Black girls like DC resident Maddie Morgan. I was on a walk and her dad, I didn't know him, jumped out of a car because he saw me walking to bring a letter to me that she had written the President of the United States, 11 years old. And she asked President Biden that she be considered when he was looking for justices. She pointed out that with her age, she could remain on the court for at least 80 years. Her argument was that she wanted to be the voice for children. And she said, I live a few blocks away from the Supreme Court, so it will be easy for me to get there. After the president made his nomination of Judge Jackson, she said, if I'm going to be snubbed, it couldn't be for a better candidate. And she actually was here at the hearing to witness history being made. Throughout the hearing, Judge Jackson demonstrated her command of the law and her reverence for the Constitution. Judge Jackson, in fact, as we know, has more judicial experience than 4 of the nominees and now justices had when they came before this committee. 4 people who are currently serving on the court. She'll be the first person on the court to be in the room where it happens, where those decisions are made, with public defender experience. She knows the importance of public service from her parents, both teachers, and she has that perspective of knowing that life isn't always easy. She's had family members who served in law enforcement. And I think this might be a good moment to get at some of the arguments my colleagues have and will be making. And I think I might be a good person to bring this up because I'm someone that has consistently asked questions of nominees. I always ask about antitrust, even though they don't want me to ask it. I always ask about the First Amendment and many detailed questions about stare decisis and the like. And I was the one on this committee that one of the nominees actually apologized to, not for what I did, but what he said. And I want to get at some of the criticisms that we have heard lodged against this great woman. When we hear about this child pornography, what I see a mom who opened up her heart to all of us and explained to all of us how no one can be the perfect mom, no matter how hard you try. I see a woman of deep faith who was questioned about that and explained her deep faith many, many times. Let's look at the facts. In 8 of the 11 child pornography cases that Judge Jackson handled, she gave a sentence at or above either the probation office recommendations. And when she imposed other sentences, it was because she looked at the case carefully. And by the way, she made her own decision. Maybe not everyone in this room would have agreed with it, but she was being a judge, just like judges that were supported by my colleagues made that decision. I'm not even going to mention these judges' names that I'm about to talk about, because I don't think they should be dragged into this just because they happen to make decisions that were below guidelines. One of them on the Second Circuit, strongly supported by one of our colleagues and commended, said when he sentenced a defendant to 60 months, which was 60% lower than the bottom of the guideline range at 151 months. Another one who was complimented on the 11th Circuit by our Republican colleagues, he sentenced a defendant to 84 months, which was 44% lower than the bottom of the guidelines. Here's some Trump nominees. One in the Eastern District of Missouri, who's a judge, sentenced a defendant to 60 months when the guideline range was 135 to 168. Another Trump nominee that was supported by our colleagues, Eastern District of Missouri, sentenced a defendant to 60 months when the guideline range was 78 to 97 months. Another, I will not go on, but they could all have been dragged through the mud too. They could have been dragged through the mud and called names with these kinds of implications. Last week, the committee received a letter from a former federal child exploitation prosecutor in the District of Columbia who wrote that Judge Jackson, quote, had a reputation for carefully considering the circumstances of every case, and that former and current prosecutors note that she was thoughtful and individualized in her approach to these cases. And if you really want to go deep into the details here, Senator Cruz released a chart saying the average sentence imposed by Judge Jackson in possession cases, possession of porn, is 29.3 months. But it is based on only 4 cases and omits one that would raise her average to 52 months, much closer to the reported national average of 60 months. And if you were considering all of her non-production cases, possession, receipt, distribution of pornography, and yes, as a former prosecutor, I know these differences, the average sentence imposed was 65 months. I literally cannot even believe that I'm going into these details, but I am. Last, when we hear about judicial philosophy, let me quote Judge Roberts in his own hearing. He said, well, I have said I do not have an overarching judicial philosophy. I think we heard this great judge and how she's going to decide cases. She's going to decide cases with fairness, and she's going to do the best thing, and she's going to look at the facts, and she's going to look at the law, and she's going to make a decision. She recognizes, as she told me at her hearing, that public confidence in the court is crucial. That's why she's always written such long and transparent decisions to explain to the public her reasoning. She told me about her deep commitment to judicial independence. When I asked her about stare decisis, she said that if there were massive shifts every time a new justice came on or every time new circumstances arose, there would be a concern that public confidence would be eroded. As she put it, stare decisis, looking at the past cases, I'm just paraphrasing that, furthers the rule of law in this country. She is someone that understands and has shown her ability to take on complex matters. But just as importantly, she's someone who understands the real world impact of court's decision. She understands that those words on the page aren't just words. Those words on the page can change people's lives, whether they can get health care, what their options are, if they can have clean water and air, even if they're going to be able to vote, when they're going to be able to vote, and how they're going to be able to vote. At this critical moment in our history, Judge Jackson has the qualities to make sure that the court and the Constitution, in Justice Breyer's words, work for the people of today. She will bring to the court her rich experience as a judge, a working mom, a family member who has law enforcement, a child of teachers, a former public defender, and a deeply committed public servant. Her story is a quintessentially American one. And as she put it, her success is, quote, a testament to the hope and promise of this country. Now, it is our duty as senators on this committee to take on that hope and promise of America. And remember, as this day moves forward, and as we hear from our colleagues, and we take this vote, that this is all about that spirit of hope and promise. And let's make Maddie Morgan proud. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Klobuchar. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are a few more consequential decisions the Senate undertakes or this committee undertakes than the nomination and confirmation of Supreme Court justices. Judge Jackson is charming. She's talented. She has an inspiring life story. If she's confirmed, she will be an historic first, the first African-American woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. I've known Judge Jackson for 30 years. I've always liked her personally. But the assessment this body is charged with the Constitution with making is whether her record demonstrates she will be a justice who will faithfully uphold the Constitution. Now, our Democratic colleagues and their cheerleaders in the corporate media have repeatedly tried to suggest that any opposition to Judge Jackson's nomination is rooted in racism or sexism. There's some irony in that because all of the Democrats on this committee were only so happy to vote against the confirmation of Justice Amy Coney Barrett without facing any concerns about the sexism they were showing. And there's greater irony in Democrats celebrating this historic first because it would have occurred 20 years ago. An African-American woman could have served on the Supreme Court 20 years ago, except for the fact that Democrats filibustered a qualified African-American woman, Judge Janice Rogers Brown. Indeed, if members of this committee were asked to raise your hand, have you ever filibustered a qualified African-American woman in order to prevent her from going to the U.S. Supreme Court? 3 hands would go up. Not on this side of the aisle, but the 3 most senior Democrats would all be obliged to raise their hand. Also, Joe Biden, if he's at home watching this on C-SPAN, Joe Biden would raise his hand as well. Chuck Schumer would raise his hand as well. So this historic first could have happened a decade ago, but for the unified partisan opposition of Democrats to letting it happen with a judge who was not on the hard left. A number of Democrats complained that there were hard questions asked. Well, that's our responsibility. Every one of the questions focused on her record as a judge, her sentencing record, her academic writings, her speeches to law schools. Not a single Republican senator asked her about her high school yearbook, engaged in the kind of personal slanders that Democrats have made a business about. If the questions were hard, it is because her record is at the extreme. There have been 115 men and women who have served on the Supreme Court. If Judge Jackson is confirmed, I believe she will prove to be the most extreme and the furthest left justice ever to serve on the United States Supreme Court. She will be to the left of Justice Sotomayor. She will be to the left of Justice Kagan. She will be way, way, way to the left of Justice Stephen Breyer. That's why radical leftist groups have pledged to spend over $1 million supporting her nomination while they demanded the Biden White House pick the furthest left, the most extreme nominee. That's their agenda. Now, our Democratic colleagues like to pretend they don't support the agenda this justice can be predicted to follow. Based on her record, if she is confirmed, I think the odds are virtually 100% that she will vote to overturn Heller versus District of Columbia, which means she will vote to overturn, to take away the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms of every individual. If she is confirmed, the odds are virtually 100% she will vote to overturn the Citizens United case, which means she will vote to take away the free speech rights of Americans to participate in the political process. If she is confirmed, the odds are nearly 100% she will vote to strike down every single reasonable restriction on abortion across the country. That includes restrictions on partial birth abortion. That includes requirements for parental notification or consent. If she is confirmed, the odds are nearly 100% she will vote to overturn efforts to enforce our nation's borders and to deport those here illegally. The Make the Road case demonstrated her willingness to put left-wing policy above the law. If she is confirmed, the odds are over 100% she will vote to give away U.S. sovereignty to international tribunals and international bodies. If she is confirmed, the odds are overwhelming she will vote to undermine our religious liberty and to overturn decisions like Zellman versus Simmons-Harris, the 5-4 landmark decision that upheld school choice. Understand the consequence of this nomination. If she is confirmed, the odds are very, very high she will vote to throw out school choice programs all across this country. And then there's crime. No topic has been the focus of this hearing more than her record on crime, and her record on crime is out of the mainstream. Her record on crime is extreme. Now, our Democratic colleagues have responded with a straw man. They've responded saying, well, judges all over the country sentence below the guidelines. When you look at her record, it's not just below the guidelines, though. In 100% of the child pornography cases where Judge Jackson had discretion, 100%, she sentenced not just below the guidelines, but below where the prosecutor asked, and usually substantially below. But my colleagues say everybody does it. That's their defense. Everybody does it. Well, let's look at the facts. In criminal cases nationally, this is all criminal cases nationally. If you compare Judge Jackson's record in criminal cases nationally, her average sentence is 29.9 months. The national average is 45.1 months. So that's all crimes, murder, rape, anything that's a crime, all of them on the national statistics. She sentences a third lower than the national average. The Democrats' argument, everybody does it, doesn't stand up to the scrutiny. But when you look in particular at child pornography, a topic that is disturbing, the Democrats say, well, gosh, she doesn't like child pornography. Of course she doesn't. No rational person does. It's horrible. My Democratic colleagues go to the Senate floor and they read from her statements talking about these are not victimless crimes. These are little boys and little girls being horribly, violently assaulted. It stays with them their whole lives. I agree with what she says, but she says that and then turns around and gives the defendant, the criminal, a slap on the wrist. And if you look at the records, possession of child pornography, the national average is 68 months. That's every federal district judge in the country. What is Judge Jackson's average? 29.2 months. She's sentence is 57% lower than the national average, 57%. Even more disturbing, distribution. The national average for distributing child porn, videos of little children being sexually assaulted, the national average is 135 months. 11 years. That's a long sentence because it's a horrible crime. Her average is 71.9 months. That's 47% less, but this is even more striking when you realize that the mandatory minimum for distributing child porn is 60 months. That under federal law, you can't go below 60 months. What that means is that judges across the country on average sentence those distributing child porn to 75 months longer than the mandatory minimum. And Judge Jackson sentences them on average to 11.9 months longer. Now, the Democrats suggest this is cherry picking. This is based on every single child pornography case she's decided. And by the way, we just last week after the hearing got information on another case, United States versus Weeks, of an individual who raped his 13-year-old niece. Judge Jackson sentenced him to half what the prosecutors wanted because he failed to register on a sex registry and went to work at a daycare while he was released early because of Judge Jackson's sentence. He committed another sexual assault, a rape. Again, she had him before her, and again, she sentenced him to half what the prosecutors sought. This is a pattern. Now, Democratic senators like to say they don't want to abolish the police. But I'll tell you what, if Judge Jackson is confirmed, her record demonstrates that it is 100% certain she will vote to overturn the death penalty, and that repeatedly she will vote to overturn strict sentences on violent criminals, to release violent criminals from jail, to overturn strict punishments on sex offenders. And my Democratic colleagues like to say when crime is skyrocketing, when murder rates are skyrocketing, when carjacking is skyrocketing, when sexual assaults are skyrocketing, my Democratic colleagues say it's not my fault. Well, I'll tell you what, when you vote to confirm justices who release criminals over and over and over again in a way that is wildly out of the mainstream, it is the Democrats' fault.
Senator Coons.
Thank you.
Big Ten. Big Ten. Oh, man. Big Ten. Big Ten. We got to give Big Ten. We got to give Big Ten something, man. We got to give Big Ten some applause, man. Big Ten, man. Oh, man. What are you doing? He running for president? Big Ten. Big Ten. Come on, Big Ten. I think we got to do a break there. I think we got to go. We can't break this down right now. I want to go back to the video, but I had to stop it right there because I watched this already. I knew what he was going to say. I needed you to hear that. It's so many things. I need to make a PowerPoint just to give justice to all of the different ramifications and downstream effects of this person being elected to the Supreme Court. She will possibly defund the police, overturn the death penalty, take away gun rights, abortion, pedal. It's like the list goes on. She is the most extreme to the left of any left. She is the most Democrat of Democrat. She is the most liberal of liberal. This is not about Ketanji's sex. This is not about Ketanji's race. This is about Biden and his reset. Biden could have had a black woman on the Supreme Court. We talked about Biden. You know who Biden is, but you voted for Biden anyway. No one should be surprised about what's happening and how covert. This is what they call political theater. Shout out to Latina Patriot. This is what's called political theater. See what they're doing right now? This is a stage. Just like on the Oscars, this is a stage. This is a performance, right? And this political theater is getting you to feel good about a black woman being elected to the Supreme Court so that they could take away your rights and push you into the fourth industrial revolution. Everybody keeps telling you that you will own nothing and you will like it, but no one is telling you how you will get there. This is how you get there. You will go there smiling. You will go there laughing. You will go there happy because you got a black woman on the Supreme Court. Ooda lolly. Ooda lolly. We got a black woman on the Supreme Court. But now you taking everything away from me. Fair exchange. This what you wanted? Ain't that you said all you want was a black woman, right? You didn't ask for rights. You didn't ask for progression. You didn't ask for education. You didn't ask for jobs. You didn't ask for better protection in your community. You didn't ask for better upward mobility. You didn't ask to decrease the generational wealth gap. You want a black woman on the Supreme Court. That's what you want, huh? You want a black woman? I got you. I got you. Black woman, here you go. Black woman on the Supreme Court. Here you go. You happy now? You happy now? Huh? They rocking you to sleep. They rock. This is what they say to sheeple. They rocking you to sleep. They rocking you to sleep. That's all you wanted was a black woman on the Supreme Court. You don't want your children to graduate high school. You don't want better society. You don't want less crime. Do you see her how she synthesis on crime? Ricky, let's go. Let's go. Just we talking about check out her photo. Check out the wiki and check the photos. Good luck, brother. Keep your toilet clean. Oh, man. She's a communist. Owning nothing, that means, okay. Owning nothing, that means, yep, the C word. We talked about that before. Latina lady I was working for said she was abused by her grandfather, and her mother said, you think you're the only one, and she's nothing. Oh, man. It's been normalized. It has been normalized. In this person's opinion. So, what what really turned me on to her is not all these cases. Ketanji had a chance. There were black workers in Mississippi working on a plant, and they have been discriminated against. They sued the plant for $20 million, and they won. Ketanji was the judge who was supposed to administer the $20 million to the black employees. They had got called the N-word. They had got taken off their hours. So they filed a lawsuit, and they won. The black workers filed a lawsuit. They won. They got $20 million, the black workers at this plant. Ketanji was the federal judge who was supposed to administer the money to the black employees. She refused to administer the money. They won the money. They won $20 million. Ketanji refused to administer the money. She goes, when she refused to answer the question about what is a woman, this is a narcissist. That's why I'm talking about narcissists today. She doesn't believe she has to answer them. She believes she's above them. She doesn't believe she has to follow the law. She believes she creates the law. She does not believe she is unhinged, like a lot of narcissists. We see this in our community. There's a lot of women like this in America. She is completely unhinged. She does not believe she has to follow the law. She does not believe she has to answer your question. She has an inability to respect the law. She has an inability to respect people and humans. Voting this person to the Supreme Court is like electing a non-human. You guys have to understand the type of people who are moving in this society. What they believe and how they feel they are broken. These are broken individuals who are seeking to hurt. We got somebody new. I think I might have seen this person before. I thought you were going to cover the vote. What is the result of the vote? What can we do about this? Nothing. It's a lot of these brothers with this with that natural. See, if this brother would have ran for president, we would never have a black president. Before Barack Obama, we had a lot of guys like this who ran for president with this haircut and with this look. Nobody trusts you because you're disingenuous and you're ignorant. Your statement is ignorant. It shows you have not watched the whole show. You have no breadth of knowledge of who I am and what I present. You come in the chat trying to score points, but you end up making yourself look like a fool. My name is perfect. I didn't name me perfect. What I do is I'm a YouTube content creator and I roast idiots like you in my chat. Roasting idiots like you in my chat gets me subscribers and views. You are an idiot. And that suit is on your neck too tight. And that natural, that TWA, teeny weeny afro was played out in 1977. You look like an old Baptist preacher who ain't collected tithes in 6 months. You have no idea what you're talking about. I am educating my audience that on political theater, for individuals who may have thought that Ketanji's nomination was about her being a black woman, Biden blocked a black woman 20 years ago. I am educating my audience who is traditional, conservative, and Christian about what their country will look like if she is confirmed. That is what this is, because as a political electorate, we need to have knowledge on what this person is and what the actual agenda is, so that when the next election, like the senator said, when the Republicans have the opportunity to take over the Senate again, the only way to check, because the branches of government, 3 branches of government, the only way to keep check and power and balance on this new liberal Supreme Court will be to have a Republican Senate, right? We are discussing the downstream effects and the ramifications of this political theater. If you would have paid attention and you would have sat in class, you would have hung up your coat, you would have got your pencil and your pad, and you would have took notes like a good student, like a good pupil. Follow the leader. My name is King Perfect. You would have been able to make a better comment with more intellect and more insight. But you made an ignorant statement, so now you roasted in the chat. You roasted in the chat. You on fire in the chat. Roasted, ignorant, trying to sound smart. This is what happened when you try. My father said we never say try. Why would you come in Perfect's chat and not have a breadth of knowledge on who I am? Hold on, let me put my link in the chat for this claim. Why would you come in my chat and not know who I am and what I do? I body clowns for a living. This is my job. I'm a content creator. I have over 200 videos, 30,000 views. Get your monkey foot on the panel. Come on the panel, or you a clown. Come on the panel, debate your point, or you are a clown. Ken Ross, you are a clown with a cheap suit from Kmart that is ill-fitting and a TWA afro. You are the epitome of what a blue pill, simplified, unmasculine man looks like. Are you promoting Ketanji after everything that's been said? What is your perspective, brother? The link is in the chat with your clown self. Thanks for the insight. This happens every time. This happens every time. Every time. A lack of intellect. And then this is the thing. They see me black. They see my fat face. They see my big welfare green pepper nose. And they think that suit makes them intelligent. That suit does not give you intellect, brother. You need to read. But this is the thing. The understanding that I have. That's why I'm the host. Because I can disseminate information in a way that people can walk away with gems. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's comical, right? It's comical. But you leave. You won't join the panel. You won't have another intelligent comment to back up what you said. You could have read Gold Professor's comment. You could have read Willy Wonka's comment. You could have read Latina Patriots comment. It's the comment section is full of intelligent commentary. We have we have intellectuals in the chat. Gold Professor is a wise beyond his years. You could have learned so much from Gold Professor. You could have asked Gold, his name is Professor in his name. Ken, are you asleep? Gold Professor, intellectual, wise, my OG, my big brother, Willy Wonka, intellectual, wise. Willy Wonka has intelligent commentary from the beginning of the show. You could have simply read one of Willy Wonka's comments. You would have had a better breath to speak. You like a child who wanders in the middle of a movie, asking questions. You know what I'm saying? You're like an irritating little cousin who comes into the middle of the movie, disturbing the whole process. You need to rewind to the beginning of the podcast. Maybe go watch some of my playlists. Watch the Ahmaud Arbery playlist. Watch the Kim Porter playlist. What else? Kyle Rittenhouse playlist. This ain't new for me, homeboy. This ain't new for me, homeboy. Go check my resume. You might want to go do that before you speak out of turn in class. Before you speak out of turn. See, I got to send you to the, hey, shout out Street Doctor. I got to send this clown to the mic. Let's put this clown on timeout. Let's put this clown. We got to send this clown. Let's send this clown to the microwave. Go to the microwave, kid. Put 5 minutes, and then you can come back to class. We gotta put this clown on timeout, man. We gotta put this clown. What else, Street Doctor? 3 kings in the building. We gotta put this clown on timeout. We gotta put this clown on timeout, man. We gotta put this clown on timeout, man. Oh man. This is perfect. The picture most likely is not here. So kid, go Cam and chat, boy. Cam up and rack up. And bring $1,000, man. And bring $1,000 when you cam up. Bring $1,000. Cam up and rack up, man. Shout out to Red Supreme. And if this clown makes content, anybody that watch Ken, if I see you in the chat, you not welcome here. We not supporting no more clowns. Unintelligible, broke-ass clown. Cam up and rack up. Shout out to Red Supreme. Cam up and rack up, man. Put that boy on timeout. Put that boy on timeout. Put that boy on timeout. Man, come on. We going back to the video. Hey, Big Ted, man. Ketanji is political theater. If you believe in the Second Amendment, if you believe in people being put in jail when they do a crime, if you believe in a lot of the things that she will vote against, you need to be intelligent about who you vote for your next senator, who you vote for your next congressperson, who you vote for the next president. That's why we're talking about this, Ken, because you need to be intelligent as an electorate. If this person makes it to the Supreme Court and there is an agenda to make America more liberal for the Christian, conservative, traditional citizens of this country, we need to know so that we can be informed on our vote. And I need to know who is this Supreme Court so I can make a better decision on who I vote for my supervisor, my Congress, my appellate judges. If we would have been more vigilant on Ketanji, she wouldn't have made it this far. Ken? Let's go back to the topic, your commentary about Ketanji Jackson. Do you think that her influence is coming from her husband? So, Gold Professor said that earlier. If Ketanji is elected, then her husband becomes president. This is the same thing that was speculated with Kamala Harris. And this is the thing. Gold Pete, it all depends if you believe. This afternoon, I'm going live discussing a malignant narcissist. I believe Ketanji is also a malignant narcissist. I believe we have an issue with the women in this country because of the societal policies being narcissists. We have a lot of narcissist women, right? So if If I say that Ketanji is a malignant narcissist based on her actions, then I can't say that she is influenced by her husband. And the same thing goes with Kamala Harris, and the same thing goes with Jada Pinkett Smith. These narcissist women don't have the ability to love or show empathy. I believe Kamala and Ketanji added these white men to their repertoire as part of political theater. These white men are ornamental. I'm going to say that again. For Kamala Harris and Ketanji Jackson, these white men are ornamental. These are malignant narcissists, and no one has influence over their decisions. Ketanji is unhinged. She does not love that man. Kamala does not love that man. She does not love the children. These narcissists don't have the ability to show empathy, love, and connect to give that man influence. That white man is ornamental. And I'm going to talk more about the malignant narcissist in my afternoon show as we break down more about Will and Jada. It's not about Will and Jada. It's about helping men describe and if you're in a relationship with a narcissistic woman, get out. Get out. And I'm going to give you some characteristics. We're going to discuss the malignant narcissist. We're going to discuss the grandiose narcissist. We're going to give you characteristics to identify narcissism, which is why I'm able to identify Ketanji. If you listen to how the way she responded, can you tell me what a woman is? She said no. That was a personality disorder. This woman has a narcissistic personality disorder. It goes beyond what they're presenting today. It goes beyond what they're presenting today. Oh, Ken's off timeout. Ken is off timeout, y'all. Ken is off timeout, man. Ken is off. Oh, okay. Give Ken's off timeout, man. Ken is off timeout, man. He said he apologized, man. He apologized. Okay. Salute to Ken. Salute to Ken. Ken is back. Ken is back. Thank you for coming back, bro. You gotta take notes, man. You gotta take notes. Hey, I love you, brother. I love you, brother. Hey, I'm a YouTube content creator. This is what I do. You got to be careful when I'm on fire and I'm in my mode. You got to be careful what you say in the chat. It's just like any other YouTube content creator. But, brother, I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're still here. Much love and respect. I pray for you to have a great week. It's Monday. It's the beginning of the week. I pray for everybody watching. I pray a covering over everybody watching. I want you guys to have a great week. A lot of my listeners are truck drivers. I pray that you have safe passage. My wife called me, said it was raining in Sacramento. So I want to pray that she's safe. You know, when it's the first rain, it'd be slick with the oil and the water mixing. So everybody, I want you to have a blessed week. We're going to go back to the video and make sure y'all tune in later on when we talk about the malignant narcissist and why I say Ketanji is not influenced by her husband.
Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, thank you for maintaining, to the extent you can, the decorum of these proceedings, a respectful process, and I am particularly grateful to President Biden for nominating Judge Jackson and to Judge Jackson for her courage and her engagement in this process, which at time has been withering, even abusive. I was impressed by the fact that she was raised by a family committed to service, that raised her with a sense of dignity and integrity and a very strong sense of self, with which she carried herself through what have been some challenging moments here in this committee. I believe the majority of the members of this committee have made a good faith effort to learn about Judge Jackson and her record. And through hours of one-on-one meetings, an extensive review of her record, and hearing from organizations and advocates nationally, they've come away with a view where they are certain of her both outstanding character and impeccable qualifications. Anyone who watched these hearings saw Judge Jackson give a clinic on judicial temperament and how to conduct oneself in a poised and thoughtful way that I thought gave a voice through action of her impeccable character. To be sure, there have been a number of attacks lobbed at Judge Jackson, some of them really quite recently, and so I think some brief rejoinder may well be worth a few minutes of our time. Judge Jackson is not far, far from the mainstream. In fact, in over 250 reviews conducted by the American Bar Association, and that includes judges and prosecutors, defense attorneys, fellow practitioners from her time as a public defender, her time at different law firms, her time on the bench, and her clerkships, not one found her far outside the mainstream. Judge Jackson has nothing to do with critical race theory, despite a number of engaging posters. As she testified, and as the record shows, she's never cited or relied upon critical race theory in her 9 years on the bench and in her more than 570 written opinions. She is not a radical liberal activist judge, and I don't think any of us should be making proclamations about what we are certain she would do to the trajectory of American law. As all of us who were here for the first day remember, Republican-appointed conservative Judge Thomas Griffith from the D.C. Circuit testified in front of us that in Judge Jackson's 9 years on the district court bench and more than 570 opinions, she demonstrated a diligent and careful approach. As Judge Griffith told us, Judge Jackson is an independent jurist who adjudicates based on the facts and the law and not as a partisan. Judge Jackson is not soft on crime. I think it is particularly hard to square the fact that two of the largest, best informed, most active law enforcement advocacy organizations in our country, the National Fraternal Order of Police and the International Association of Chiefs of Police, have spoken up in support of her nomination. It is hard to square that with some of the mischaracterizations that have been lobbed in her direction. She is from a family dedicated to service to our nation, service as educators, as police officers, her brother who was with us serving in the military, people who've devoted their lives to the American cause, to improving and caring for other families and communities. And she is absolutely not an enabler of child abusers. One conservative prosecutor, Fox News opinion writer, said that these repeated assaults, mischaracterizing her entire character and record based on just a few sentencing decisions, are meritless to the point of demagoguery. That's an elegant way of saying worthless. Of the 100 offenders she sentenced, there have been just 5 cases for possession of child pornography, and in every case, she sent the offender to jail. As my colleague from Minnesota ably and thoroughly reviewed, she's in the mainstream of judges sentencing in these cases. I'll just add 2 more pieces of evidence to this ongoing debate, if I might. An ABC News review of federal judges appointed and confirmed during the previous administration found a dozen had handed down similar below-guideline sentences in cases of defendants who were charged with viewing, possessing, transporting, or distributing child pornography. The committee also received a letter from judges, 9 retired district court and circuit court judges, retired. This is affiliated with Harvard Law School. A letter that attests that her practice in sentencing, and let me read if I can, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's record in individual cases is entirely consistent with the nationwide patterns described by the U.S. Sentencing Commission and what the DOJ prosecutors and U.S. Court probation departments recommended. To the extent she departed, it is well within the mainstream of what other judges were doing nationwide by judges appointed by both Republicans and Democrats. Finally, I thought this was in some ways the hardest to understand. Judge Jackson is not going to pack the Supreme Court. There were a whole series of efforts to ascribe to Judge Jackson the views of different advocacy organizations. And as Senator Whitehouse thoroughly, repeatedly, and actively has laid out, We have too many groups that are advocating and engaging in trying to pre-cook what our work is here on the Judiciary Committee by digging into backgrounds, by pre-packaging, by advertising, and by selling. We can and should make real progress in opening up these dark money groups by voting for the Disclose Act. If later this year, when we have a chance on the floor of the Senate, my colleagues refuse to vote so that the American people can know who's really funding all this stuff, then they don't really want to know the truth. There's a lot more that I could present this morning to lay out the truth behind all of these aggressive, and I would say often baseless, attacks on Judge Jackson. Sadly, I think the truth about this is less relevant because a principal goal here is about stirring up division and scoring political points. Instead of a conversation about the significance of Judge Jackson becoming the first Black woman to sit on our nation's highest court, what it will mean to have a Supreme Court justice who's served as a trial judge for nearly a decade and as a federal public defender and as a private practitioner and as a clerk at all levels, what it will mean for her experiences, her life, her grounding, her faith, her character, to be part of the deliberation of our nation's highest court. Instead, sadly, we were treated to a series of, I think, meritless attacks that were more distraction than substance. So let me close, if I can, with just a few thoughts that I think matter as we move towards a vote. Judge Jackson testified she cares deeply about our Constitution and the rights that make us free. The truth of her statements borne out by her own life experiences, by her career in the law, her record on the bench, and her thoughtful and measured responses to all of our questions, even those presented in the most aggressive of styles. Her judicial methodology is rooted in her understanding that the role of a judge is a limited one. She is the kind of judge humble enough to know that the Constitution and the laws passed by Congress say what the law is, while judges have a limited role to decide questions based on the law and the facts presented. This nominee brings me joy and a sense of pride that as a nation we are moving in the right direction, based on our constant project of delivering an America that lives up to the aspirational words written by our founders. The Supreme Court decides cases that mean something, that have an impact in the lives of millions of Americans, that teach the world what our system of democracy and the rule of law can actually accomplish. And I think having her, as someone who served on the Sentencing Commission, as a trial court and appellate court judge, as a public defender, in that court will continue to improve our nation in ways we don't yet fully know, but where I have confidence that in her bones, she knows how important our Constitution and the rule of law are to securing liberty and equality before the law for every American. Mr. Chairman, I mentioned Ruby Bridges in my opening now a week ago. I had the honor of meeting Ruby Bridges when I was on a civil rights pilgrimage with the late Congressman John Lewis. What's always struck me about the painting that Norman Rockwell did of Ruby Bridges was that as a very young girl marching into school, that by an action of the United States Supreme Court was open to her for the first time. There were tomatoes and slurs on the wall behind her. And yet she held her chin high, she was straight, and she marched forward with a sense of confidence, despite just outside the frame of that painting there being a howling, angry mob. So too, I found that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson conducted herself in questioning here with her head held high, with a sense of confidence in our Constitution, in our democracy, and in the rule of law. Our role in confirming a justice to the highest court is among our most solemn obligations, and I am honored to vote in support of confirming Judge Jackson to be the next Associate Justice of our Supreme Court. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Coons. Senator Cotton.
Democrats in the committee and Judge Jackson herself have repeatedly said that senators should look to her record to see what kind of justice she would be. Although some of our Democratic colleagues now claim that it's engaging in conspiracy theories to dare to ask Judge Jackson about that very record. Her record and her answers are clear. Judge Jackson may be a fine woman, but she has built her career as a far left activist. And that didn't change when she put on a black robe 10 years ago. In fact, Judge Jackson remains more of a defense attorney for criminals from the bench than a judge. Across the board, Judge Jackson's average sentences for criminals are 34% lighter than the national average for criminal cases, and 25% lighter than the average on her own old court, the DC District Court. And the child pornography cases are just the most sensational examples of her soft on crime attitude. In her hearing, she talked about how deeply disturbing these cases are and how she always gave the criminals a really serious talking to for their possession and distribution of videos of young children being sexually abused. But a serious lecture is not a serious sentence. These aren't just numbers, these are criminals with real victims. And they go on to victimize again because Judge Jackson lets them off early. One of those criminals was Wesley Hawkins, who's a serious child pornography offender that Judge Jackson let off easy. The sentencing guidelines recommended 8 to 10 years in prison, 8 to 10 years. Judge Jackson gave him just 3 months. And that's only 1/6 of what her own probation office recommended. And a few years later, when Hawkins would still have been in prison if she had followed the guidelines, he did something else that got him 6 more months in custody, twice the original sentence. When all 11 Republicans on this committee sent a letter asking for details of what happened, Judge Jackson refused to provide any further information. I guess so much for looking at her record. Of course, her leniency isn't limited to these child pornography cases. In 2017, Judge Jackson apologized. She apologized to a fentanyl kingpin with a history of drug trafficking because she couldn't find a way to give him less than the mandatory minimum sentence imposed by Congress. And she felt bad about being so mean to a fentanyl kingpin. A couple years later, though, she found a way to twist the law to resentence him below the mandatory minimum sentence by making the First Step Act retroactive, even though Congress had explicitly chosen not to make it retroactive. She also said that there were no victims in the case. Fentanyl trafficking is not a victimless crime, and anyone who doesn't understand that does not belong on the Supreme Court. Judge Jackson also granted compassionate release to a man who brutally murdered a deputy U.S. Marshal by shooting him on the steps of a church at a funeral. He was repeatedly denied parole. And in prison, he had racked up infractions for things like threatening prison staff and possessing a dangerous weapon. Not exactly a reformed saint. Judge Jackson granted him compassionate release anyway because he had high blood pressure. In 2013, a sex offender had repeatedly raped his 13-year-old niece and was arrested for falsifying sex offender records to avoid telling the government where he was living, or that he was working at a daycare, despite a restriction on his contact with children. The government asked for him to go to prison for 2 years. Judge Jackson gave him just 1 year. During that second year, when he should have been in prison, yes, he went on to try to rape again and then bribe the victim with $2,500 to recant her testimony. Judge Jackson habitually sympathizes with criminals over victims. These are just a few of the many cases in Judge Jackson's record that all make one thing clear. If you are a criminal, you would be lucky if your case is assigned to Judge Jackson. If you are the victim of a crime or anyone else seeking justice, you better hope your case got assigned somewhere else. As a trial judge, Judge Jackson could only give the benefit of the doubt to one criminal at a time. As a Supreme Court justice, she would be able to give the benefit to criminals nationwide in all cases. Let's consider her terrorism cases. She seems to have a real interest in helping terrorists. Now, it's true that you shouldn't judge a lawyer solely for taking on an unpopular case, and defending criminals doesn't necessarily make someone ineligible to be a judge. But during the Bush administration, representing terrorists was all the rage in liberal legal circles. These were not unpopular cases, but instead, lawyers at liberal law firms and public defender's office fought with each other to be able to work for these terrorists. Judge Jackson represented 4 terrorists as a public defender, one of whom she continued to represent in private practice. She also argued in favor of terrorists in 2 other cases in amicus briefs while in private practice. Her backers try to have it both ways. On the one hand, they say this is all just assigned work, but on the other hand, they celebrate her as a hero for volunteering for so-called assigned work. Well, whether it was assigned or volunteered, the fact that Judge Jackson didn't do a very good job. In 3 of the 4 cases, her filings were identical, word for word, comma for comma. She alleged identical facts and legal arguments in every one of those cases. The only differences was the swapped out name and case numbers. So let's look at those terrorists. One of her terrorist clients designed the prototype shoe bomb that was used in an unsuccessful attempt to blow up a passenger airplane. Another of her terrorist clients planned and executed a rocket attack on U.S. forces in Afghanistan, and another of her terrorist clients was arrested in a raid on an al-Qaeda explosive training camp. Yet in every case, she claimed that her clients had nothing to do with terrorism and had never been affiliated with al-Qaeda or the Taliban, despite having no reason to believe that her alleged facts, copied and pasted from one brief to the next, were true. Judge Jackson also has a habit of refusing to answer simple common sense questions in her hearing and in questions for the record. Famously, when Senator Blackburn asked her what a woman was, she claimed that she had no idea. I asked her who has more of a right to be in the United States, new American citizens who follow the rules, waited their turn and came the right way, or illegal aliens whose very first act in the United States was to break our laws and who continue breaking them every day that they remain here illegally. Judge Jackson declined to answer. And when I asked Judge Jackson whether releasing Guantanamo Bay terrorists would make us more safe or less safe, she again pretended to have no clue. And of course, she refused to take an opinion on court packing, unlike the justice she would replace, Stephen Breyer, or the sainted Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Judge Jackson plays ignorant not because she doesn't know these answers, but because her liberal judicial philosophy is based on denying reality and trying to invent a new reality through the brute force of will as a judge. Judge Jackson's attempts to invent a new reality demonstrate a willingness to skirt the law when it doesn't fit her preferred outcome. Not only did she engage in what the Sixth Circuit called an end run around Congress to make the First Step Act retroactively reduce the sentence of that fentanyl kingpin I mentioned earlier, she also worked hard to strike down a Trump administration policy of removing recently arrived illegal aliens. The law passed by Congress granted DHS, quote, sole and unreviewable discretion on the issue. But Judge Jackson inserted herself to strike down what she called, quote, a terrible proposal by DHS, as if it's the judge's place to decide what is and is not a terrible immigration proposal. The D.C. Circuit Court, no hotbed of conservative activism, reversed her and noted that, quote, there could hardly be a more definitive expression of congressional intent than the clear language of the statute she disregarded, because she didn't care. She had an anti-Trump op-ed to write in the form of a judicial opinion as part of her audition for the political left to put her on the Supreme Court one day. Last week, Senator Durbin said that despite Judge Jackson saying explicitly that she doesn't have a judicial philosophy, she does have one, but, quote, you have to take the time to read any or all of her 578 opinions that she has issued. And for once, Senator Durbin and I see things similarly. Judge Jackson has a judicial philosophy, and that philosophy is obvious from her record on the bench. Judge Jackson will coddle criminals and terrorists. She will twist and ignore the law to reach any result that she wants. That is not what we need from a Supreme Court justice, and that is why I will vote no on her nomination.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I want to join in thanking you and the ranking member for conducting these hearings in a really judicious way. To adopt my colleague's baseball analogy, we've seen not only wild pitches, but more than a few brushbacks and even some beanballs. And I think you have conducted these hearings in a way that encourages us to look at the truth and look at our role in history. We've seen a lot of meritless demagoguery, concocted outrage, and in fact, even this morning, nothing really new and nothing true in many of the attacks on Judge Jackson. The fact of the matter is that Republicans have repeatedly supported Trump-appointed nominees that had similar sentencing records as Judge Jackson. There are 6 of them in the record, but they've chosen to raise this hypocritical line of attack on the first Black woman to be nominated to the Supreme Court. When these kinds of lies have become so blatant that even the right-wing media echo chamber can't support them with a straight face, it really is saying something. The latest Republican attacks in recent days continue that trend, cherry-picking data and slanting analysis to try to disingenuously smear a distinguished jurist. We all recognize that child sexual abuse material is abhorrent. That's the reason why I have led bipartisan legislation with members of this committee to stop it and hold accountable anyone who would enable it. And we have voted unanimously to bring that legislation to the floor. The American people really are having nothing of these attacks. She has wowed America. Any of us going home over these past weekends have seen a standing ovation for Judge Jackson from the American people. And the reason is that her nomination will be historic. We are, in fact, making history. It is a joyous and exciting moment for all of America. Her nomination will make the Supreme Court look more like America and hopefully think more like America. It is, in effect, a giant leap into the present, because the present of America looks like Judge Jackson and a more diverse judiciary at every level that President Biden has sought to achieve. And we have supported in achieving on this committee. Representation matters. It matters for the legitimacy and credibility of our whole judicial system. Judges are the voice and face of justice in America. Their credibility matters. They have no armies. They have no police forces. They have no power of the purse. The United States Supreme Court depends on its credibility and the trust of the American people that it will think like they do. It is unelected, appointed for life, one of the most undemocratic kinds of institutions you could possibly imagine. And so, as excited and proud I am on this day, I also am sad that we are seeing this partisan divide on this committee and in this Congress on this extraordinarily well-qualified nominee. My colleague, Senator Cornyn, talked about legitimizing consent. Legitimizing consent means that the American people consent and legitimize the Supreme Court. If we treat the Supreme Court like another political branch, it will become one. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and right now we are fulfilling it. The United States Congress, and most especially my Republican colleagues, are fulfilling that prophecy by engaging in a party line vote against a nominee that is superbly qualified by character and intellect and will make history as the first Black woman to be confirmed. Voting along strict party lines means it is more likely that the Supreme Court will vote that way too. Regardless of how the court votes go, the public will perceive the court as more political, more polarized, and less legitimate. The court has many self-inflicted wounds. The failure to adopt a code of ethics is one of them, and I have advocated that code of ethics, and I asked the nominee about it, and she said she would talk to her colleagues. But the partisan combat we're seeing today is a wound that the United States Congress inflicts on the court. Now, this nominee has an emotional intelligence in addition to legal intellect. She is a bridge builder. She aims at consensus. My colleagues question whether she had a judicial philosophy. Well, normally, the way you determine judicial philosophy is to look at decisions and opinions, not asking the judge to describe it. She has ruled for and against the Trump administration, for and against labor and collective bargaining, for against qualified immunity, for and against class certification, because her methodology is to follow the facts and the law. And as she said in Mobarez v. Kerry, where she declined to evaluate the plaintiff's claims because doing so would have required, quote, making and imposing policy judgments of her own about the wisdom and or reasonableness of decisions, end quote. She knows her lane. That's her methodology, to stay within the judicial lane. Finally, as to law enforcement, I found overwhelmingly persuasive her description of what it was like for her to grow up with members of her family involved in law enforcement. Her uncle, who was a chief of police, her brother, a cop on patrol. Quote, I'd make three observations in response to those critiques, meaning the critique of her law enforcement background. She said, the first is that as someone who has had family members on patrol and in the line of fire, I care deeply about public safety. I know what it's like to have loved ones who go off to protect and to serve, and the fear of not knowing whether or not they're going to come home again because of crime in the community. As you said, my brother patrolled the streets of Baltimore, and I had two uncles who were career law enforcement. She is someone who knows what it means to respect and enforce the law, and she has a respect for the law, not just words on the page, as my colleague, Senator Klobuchar, said so well. She has respect for the impact of the words of judges in opinions they write and what they speak in their courtroom, the effect and the impact on everyday Americans, just as Justice Breyer has done throughout his career. These abstract legalisms, the abstruse pronouncements from the bench, they affect everyday Americans. She knows it. And that's how she will make the Supreme Court think more like America. We are making history here, not only for ourselves, but for generations to come. Quote, one of the things that having diverse members of the court does is it provides for the opportunity for role models. Since I was nominated to this position, I've received so many notes and letters and photos from little girls around the country who tell me they are so excited for this opportunity and that they have thought about the law in new ways. All of America will think about the law and about the court in new ways. And little girls women, all American, will hopefully have more respect and trust for the courts. She is, as she said, standing on the shoulders of others who couldn't be here today. Constance Baker Motley, John Lewis, her parents, and thousands of others who fought, and some died, for changes in the laws so that we would think about the law in new ways, and she would become our first Black woman on the United States Supreme Court. I will proudly vote for her. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank you for the way you've conducted these hearings. And also appreciate the hard work on the part of your staff, especially your Chief Nominations Counsel, Phil. Thank you all for the work you've done. As I said last week, I'm not going to be supporting Judge Jackson's nomination. I sat through the majority of the hearings a couple of weeks ago and submitted more than 300 questions for the record. I just have come down to believe that she may do the very thing I'm most concerned with, and that's rule on cases in a way that achieves a preferred policy outcome, not necessarily what the Constitution dictates. Probably the Make the Road case is probably the best example, where the plain text of the statute was looked past. A nationwide injunction was imposed only to be struck down by the DC Circuit. But the other thing that makes me feel like it may come to pass that she does rule outside of the plain text of the Constitution or the law is the number of people who do support her that I take at face value what she said. I asked her if she had any connection with the Arabella Group or Demand Justice, some of these other radical liberal activist organizations. She said she didn't, but she's on their top pick list everywhere you go, whether it's Demand Justice, short list for President Biden, Sierra Club, a number of the other organizations within the Arabella radical liberal activist groups seem to think that she would be a good addition to the court. And their activist outcomes couldn't be further from what I want to see with respect to the future of our nation. But I'm also concerned that Judge Jackson wouldn't take a stand on my question about packing the court. Now, I know some people have said that Judge Barrett, now Justice Barrett, did not answer the question directly. It's a very different question now than it was when Judge Barrett was here. Because now we have these same groups, Demand Justice and others, they have organizations focused on nuking the filibuster. And on January the 19th, we came really close to doing that. And we all know that if that occurred, it laid the predicate for expanding the Supreme Court. I, for one, it won't be the sole factor, but I, for one, if I have an opportunity to sit on this committee and consider a future Supreme Court justice, it will be a weighted factor in my decision whether it's coming forward from a Democrat judge or a Republican judge with respect to being considered on the Supreme Court. I think a simple answer, very similar to what Justice Ginsburg and Justice Breyer done, would have been a great way to calm my fear about the worst possible thing. We could talk about these hearings being politicizing and divisive, but nothing would be more politicizing, divisive, and destructive to the Supreme Court than to expand it and pack it. So those and other reasons, including some of the responses to my more than 300 questions for the record, I'm not going to be supporting Judge Jackson. I am a realist. I know that she's going to be confirmed. I think we've had a colleague on our side of the aisle also announce support. And I just wish her family very well. I got an opportunity during one of the breaks to go up to her parents, and I told them that they clearly raised her right. I mean, she's the realization of an American dream, and they should be very proud, and the supporters here should be very proud of her. This is not about the content of her character. I think I judge that to be very strong. This has to do with future decisions where I believe, and I hope that I'm proven wrong, that Justice Jackson may go in a direction that runs counter to much of what we talked about today. I will not be supporting her nomination, but I do wish her and her family well. And I look forward to maybe everyone listening to what they said today and in the future, whether it's a Supreme Court hearing or a Circuit Court hearing, exercise some of those words with respect to our individual behavior and action. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator Tillis. And now Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I welcome everyone in the audience here for this historic committee vote. Mr. Chairman, Judge Jackson withstood more than 18 hours of questioning during her nomination hearing. Most members asked her questions about her experience, record, and methodology for deciding cases. But some members took statements she had said or written out of context and tried to smear Judge Jackson with unfair and ugly accusations. As Senator Booker so aptly described it, Judge Jackson showed grit and grace through the entire hearing. She never returned these personal attacks. She gave substantive answers when it was possible and when senators gave her the opportunity to do so. And she corrected the attempts to distort and malign her record patiently and repeatedly. To highlight the misguided attacks around the sentencing of child pornography cases, I questioned Judge Jackson about the history of the sentencing guidelines for these crimes and the concerns that these guidelines do not reflect what's happening with child pornography offenses. And these facts bear repeating. A decade ago, the U.S. Sentencing Commission first addressed the issue of sentencing in this area. And even back then, only 40% of convicted offenders were receiving sentences within the guidelines. This was over 10 years ago. Now, 10 years later, even fewer offenders are receiving sentences within the guidelines. In 2019, just 30% of non-production offenders were sentenced within the guidelines. In the DC Circuit, where Judge Jackson served, the average goes down to just 20% of offenders. This puts Judge Jackson well within the mainstream. She is not an outlier. I named, and others on our side of the aisle, named numerous other judges nominated by President Trump and supported by the Republicans on this committee who have also sentenced offenders to sentences well below the guidelines. These judges also expressed concern about how the sentencing guidelines do not reflect the circumstances in the child pornography cases today. And this is not just a concern of the U.S. Sentencing Commission and the judges who must sentence criminal defendants. In 2013, just 1 year after the original U.S. Sentencing Commission report on this matter, the U.S. Department of Justice, who prosecutes these cases, stated that the guidelines for child pornography offenses do not accurately reflect the current landscape of child pornography conduct. Judge Jackson is a mainstream judge. She has issued decisions and sentences similar to other judges across this nation, regardless of which political party nominated that judge to the bench. And I just want to mention, we have said many times that Judge Jackson is in the mainstream. And I want to mention a nominee who has been brought up by Republicans as someone we should have supported. I take it because she was Black. And this person, again, her name was brought up several times by Republican colleagues today, Janice Rogers Brown, a Black nominee. And apparently it was for the proposition that the Democrats had a chance to support this judge because she's Black, because they seem to be making the argument that that's why we Democrats are supporting Judge Jackson, not because Judge Jackson is so eminently qualified. I looked up some things that Janice Rogers Brown noted, and she gave a speech in the early 2000s when Democrats opposed her nomination. And it was because of her extreme ideology, because she wasn't in the mainstream. For example, in this speech that I'm referring to before the Federalist Society, she railed against the role of government, claiming that government results in war in the streets. this is direct quoting, and families under siege, among other, I would say rather incendiary and extremist views. It was this extreme ideology that led to widespread opposition to Janice Rogers Brown's nomination to the DC Circuit, including from the Congressional Black Caucus, the NAACP, the Leadership Conference, and others. So the relentless, unfounded, and trumped-up attacks that Judge Jackson has faced, despite her exceptional qualifications, is nothing but a ruse. A campaign to give Republicans cover for voting against such an historic nominee because she is so highly qualified. I would like to refocus on what an exceptional and historic nominee Judge Jackson is. She has more judicial experience than 4 of the current justices had combined when they joined the court. She has broad support from across the political spectrum, including from prominent conservatives, federal judges appointed by Republican presidents, former Republican officials, and a bipartisan group of 86 former state attorneys general. Organizations from across the political spectrum and covering a wide range of issues support her, from the Black and Hispanic U.S. Chambers of Commerce and the National Education Association to the Fraternal Order of Police, the largest police union. She has been widely praised.
So, how everybody doing? How everybody doing? We still here, 2 hours, 15 minutes in. We're going to skip to the end here in a minute. I got to get ready for my afternoon show. Did you guys know she was a public defender? That illuminates the subject a whole lot. Did you guys know she was a public defender? My background, I have intimate knowledge. I have intimate history with public defenders. Her uncle was a chief. Her dad was a police officer. She grew up in Baltimore. She was a public defender. Public defenders are compromised. Public defenders are extremely compromised, and they have to capitulate. They're supposed to be representing the best interest of the public, but they work with the DA in the effort to become the district attorney and become a judge. And she ended up becoming a judge. So how can I believe that when she was a public defender, she worked 100% in the efforts of the people she was supposed to be serving? Because as a public defender, her goal was to move up in that office and get on the other side of the courtroom. She wanted to be on the other side of the courtroom. She wanted to be district attorney. She wanted to be judge. Now she's being nominated for Supreme Court. But she started as a compromised political official. A public defender works in the same office as the judge, the police, and the district attorney, but they are juxtaposed against the district attorney. The district attorney is the public defender's boss. The district attorney gives the cases to the public defender. But we, the public, are supposed to believe that this individual has your best interests at heart when their boss is telling them how to represent you. This says a lot about who Ketanji is and why she has made the decisions that she's made and why Biden chose her. Biden, we know, is a sleazebag. Biden is a sleazebag. Kamala Harris, why would he pick Kamala Harris as a vice president? Biden has an MO. He knows how to use blacks and black women to his advantage and a certain type of black woman. A certain type of black political woman Biden seems to pick on and use for political gain. Have anyone heard anything constructive from Kamala Harris since she's become vice president? Where has she flown? The world is in conflict. If there was any time that a vice president could make bones, create policy, create a movement so that she could have legs after this presidency, this is the time. This is the most tumultuous time in history. Kamala Harris is quiet. Ukraine, Russia, you got pandemic, COVID, you got inflation, gas. Kamala Harris could jump in anywhere and say, hey, Biden, this gonna be my thing. I'm a champion this. She hasn't done that. She has it. She's ornamental. Ketanji is ornamental. And Ketanji has been chosen as a pawn by the Biden administration. Biden has not, y'all got to pay attention to what's going on in the presidential office. Biden is unsuccessful as a president. He has not been able to pass his legislation. His new Green Deal is stalled. Biden has not been able to pass something similar to Barack Obama's Obamacare. He had 4 years. Just think about it, you guys. He only got 2 more years. He has a Democratic majority. He still has been unable to put forth his agenda. This nominee would be the first victory that Biden has had. This nominee is in the efforts to walk down his agenda. And I read the Green New Deal here. Fathers and families should be afraid of the Green New Deal and the lesbian women who wrote the Green New Deal. You guys don't know the details of the Green New Deal. We read the Green New Deal here. A green job is being redefined by the women. You know what I said here about the manosphere? I said the manosphere whines a lot about women. But women are not whining. Women are in politics, and women are giving themselves the advantage over men. The Green New Deal is being written by women. Women are writing themselves in the power. Women are writing themselves in the law, and men are arguing. The men are fighting. Why are we fighting? Why are we complaining about the women? Women are writing themselves into power and into law. Women wrote the Green New Deal. Do you know what the Green New Deal is? Do you know how they have redefined the green job? Do you know being a woman and being a mother will be a job in this new reset? Under the Green New Deal, single mother is a job. Under the Green New Deal, single mother, when they talk about EBI, when they talk about giving people $1,000, everybody won't get the money. Fathers won't get the money. Men won't get the money. What they are saying is we won't give women and mothers welfare anymore because being a mother is a job. And you will be paid to simply be a woman in the Green New Deal. Do you guys understand why this liberal Supreme Court justice could be problematic for Christian, conservative, traditional fathers and families? Because how do you keep your daughter married? How do you keep your daughter from being a single mother, knowing the outcome for her and your grandchildren? If the country is saying being a single mother is a job. What the check got to say? Biden is a globalist puppet and he looks demented. Why we need to pick a side? Shouldn't they cater to us? John Illuminati. That's what I thought the creation of the government, they're supposed to be working for us. They are not working for us. They are working for corporations. They are not working for us anymore. The people don't matter. I don't know what happened, John. I don't know what happened. They're supposed to work for the people. They're supposed to serve the people. Biden is ushering in more black women in power than Bill Cosby. Man, Biden is no joke. Biden, nobody saw this coming. Willy Wonka, didn't the Bible tell that in the end times, women and children will rule? This is the sign of a country destabilizing. It's not just the Bible, but 300 Warrior, he's from Iran. You could look at Willy Wonka talked about Venezuela. If you look at any country or world power as they destabilize, this is part of it. Look at Rome, the homosexuality. The homosexuality, that's part of the destabilization, right? The family breakdown, the crime, the homelessness, the end time, women and children will rule. This is not unique to America. You can look at any of these countries in our recent history as they collapse. You saw in George Soros, individuals like the Koch brothers and George Soros, who's funding Marxist groups to help this destabilization, because George Soros knows America is destabilizing. George Soros makes money when countries collapse. So George Soros is putting shit in the game for profit. Yeah. This is all part of the collapse. They're calling it a reset, right? It's not a reset. This is all part of the collapse. And it's typical for countries that go through this collapse. America is not unique. We've never been through it, but other countries, you can look in history, all of this is part of it. This is part of it. And it's going to get worse. Inflation will go up. Meat will go up. It will get, what's happening? It's going to get worse. That Nazi stuff, Hitler had a breeding program, mixed that job, and a mother with eugenics, hardcore. Yep, this is Operation Paperclip. USA Incorporation, your birth certificate is your modern day slavery. It's the moving away from God, adultery, Hollywood, materialism. It's the new reset. It's the new reset. It's the new reset. Y'all not paying attention. Y'all, this nominee is part of the Green New Deal and part of the new reset. It's part of the collapse. She will change the Constitution because we cannot support the Constitution as it stands now. The Constitution will change. This is part of America's collapse. There will be a new Constitution because there will be a new America. This is part of the collapse. Reset is making you feel better. Don't reset sound better? Don't reset sound better than collapse? Don't reset sound better? Reset sound better, right?
Exploited on the internet. Last year, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children said that number was up to 85 million. 45 to 85 in the space of just 2 or 3 years. I just disagree with Judge Jackson when she says that we shouldn't be sentencing criminals based on the number of images they possess. I think in this age, in this set of circumstances, she's fundamentally wrong and the guidelines are right. She says that she disagrees on principle with the enhancement for using the computer, using the internet. She made that very clear. She says it in the cases over and over. Fair enough, but I think she's wrong. In an age when child exploitation is driven by these images that are exploited, are distributed through the internet, through computers, to set aside computer use as a reason to give a higher sentence, to ignore the guidelines on this, I think is a mistake. I think it is a very fundamental mistake. She said that she doesn't give enhancements based on the sadistic nature of the images. She said that over and over in the cases we looked at. In the Hawkins case, she says it. In the Cooper case, she says it. I also think that that is fundamentally mistaken as a matter of substantive policy. I do think that if you have a criminal defendant who possesses images that are sadistic in nature, where children, babies, are being sadistically sexually abused, that person ought to spend more time in jail. I do think that is worse than a criminal of another variety, of another type. And I'm not the only one. Prosecutors, including a prosecutor who testified to us 2 weeks ago, who are experts in human trafficking, have made the same point. This prosecutor who was before us here on the committee, she spent 18 years prosecuting these crimes. Her testimony was an offense that involves a computer is worse than an offense that involves the mail. An offense that involves more images is worse than an offense that involves fewer. An offense that involves young children is worse than an offense involving older children. Judge Jackson's view is that we should treat everyone more leniently because more and more people are committing worse and worse child sex offenses. I'd say exactly the opposite is what we should be doing. If more people are committing worse child sex offenses, if there are more images, if the images are more graphic and exploitative in nature, then more people ought to be spending more time behind bars. And here again, I would submit to you that her judicial philosophy on this point.
Do you guys know what it means? Do you know what it means? We can't talk about this subject, right? Because of the algorithm, right? But do you know what it means that she's made it this far with her opinion? She's disagreed. She's disagreed with the law. She's disagreed with prosecutors. She's disagreed with the police. She's disagreed with public opinion. Who agreed? Do you know what it means that she's made it this far? Do you know what it means? We can't talk about the subject. We cannot talk about the subject. This is an intellect question. Do you know what it means that she's made it this far? No one agrees with her. Fathers, mothers, society, judges, police, district attorneys, no one agrees with her. The computer makes it worse. The images makes it worse. No one agrees with her. Do you know what it means that she's made it this far? Someone agrees with her. Someone agrees with her. Is it Biden? Is it Hunter Biden? Biden nominated her. Someone agrees with her. Someone thinks that her legal opinion is correct. Someone believes that she is correct. The current policy is wrong. And they are electing her to the Supreme Court in an effort to change current policy and say the computer should not be an enhancement. The severity of the pictures should not be an enhancement. That is the direction we are going if she is elected. She was appointed because Biden and Hunter Biden agree with her. Somebody agrees with her. You should be asking yourself who agrees with her.
Is why she is consistently sentenced below not just the guidelines, not just the prosecutors, but as we have seen, the national average in these cases, and even below her colleagues in the DC Circuit. And by the way, Judge Jackson's aware of this. If you look at the transcripts of her cases, Judge Jackson, to her credit, by the way, she's very thorough. Judge Jackson frequently will ask the U.S. Sentencing Commission for data on what the averages are for this kind of a crime in other courts and in her court. In the Cooper case, for instance, Judge Jackson, this is another one of the child porn cases, Judge Jackson looked to statistics about the average sentence given to similarly situated defendants. She asked the Sentencing Commission to calculate this. Her own statistics, or really the Sentencing Commission statistics, revealed that she sentenced Cooper, in this case the defendant, to 41 months below the national average. I know that because she knows it. She cites it. It's in the transcript. Here's my point. Judge Jackson, as a matter of policy, sentences below the national averages, below her colleagues. And by the way, the prosecutors know it. Read the transcripts. The prosecutors come into court, and when they appear before her, they say, Judge, we know that you have policy disagreements with the guidelines. We know that you think they over-sentence. We know you think they're too harsh. They know it. They argue with her based on it. Some cases pleading with her, at least give the defendants. In the Hawkins case, this is the 18-year-old who had thousands of images, all those videos of young children. They plead with her, at least give him 2 years. That was below the guidelines. At least give him 2 years. She gave him 3 months. I think this is why, this core judicial philosophy is why we see her doing things like apologizing to some of these offenders, just like she apologized to Wesley Hawkins. She said she was sorry for him. Now listen, I just have to say, I'm not sorry for him. I'm not sorry for these offenders. I am not sorry for the offenses they have committed and where they have gotten themselves to. They should go to jail. They should go to prison. And my fundamental disagreement with Judge Jackson is not based on her character or her integrity or her accomplishments. I think those things are beyond question. It's based on her policy and her philosophy. And I think on these core issues, she is just dead wrong. Now, let me just say this finally in conclusion. We've heard in Judge Jackson's defense, and I don't know it's really much of a defense. I know she didn't say these things, but in her defense by the White House and members of this committee, we've been told things like the child pornography is actually all a conspiracy. It's not real. It's just a conspiracy. It's made up. Let me just say for the record, sex crimes against children are not fiction. They are not a conspiracy. There are 85 million images of children being exploited available on the internet. I'm a former prosecutor. These are real crimes. I'm a father of 3 young children. These are real children. And these aren't victimless crimes. Just because they're images doesn't mean real kids aren't involved. As we heard testimony from prosecutors and experts just 2 weeks ago, child pornography creates a cycle of trafficking, of exploitation, of abuse. It is the children here who are the victims, not the criminals. On that core point, I disagree fundamentally with Judge Jackson. I wish her well, but I cannot support her nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Booker.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and the ranking member for doing everything you could to have a good hearing. And I really mean that, Mr. Chairman. You have been, to me, one of the great mentors of mine in the Senate, but watching you here is the best of Durbin, your best hits, I think, in trying to do this. And I will say to the guy you're smiling at right now, I don't know if I help you or hurt you when I say such nice things about you, sir, but you are a gentleman. I spent a lot of time in Iowa. And you exemplify Iowa nice, and I appreciate the way you've done it. This has been an interesting experience. I often think maybe we should be holding this hearing during December because, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you know about the vaunted holiday of Festivus, which is a holiday for the rest of us during the holidays. And one of the aspects of Festivus is the airing of grievances. And I think that we've had probably the best Festivus celebration here in this hearing over the last week or so, because there's been a lot of airing of grievances. Now, I'm one of these people that thinks that there's no false equivalency here, that the grievances that I've seen since I've been here, from the ridiculousness of Merrick Garland and when he was nominated, not even having a hearing, not even meeting with him, or even some of the language. I recently looked at one of the quotes from one of the people on this committee on the Republican side, who talked about if Hillary Clinton won, we should just leave any Supreme Court vacancies if the Republicans control the court. But I'm also self-interrogate enough to know that I shouldn't just sit here and air my grievances and listen to their grievances. And that's why I'm really appreciative of Ben Sass, Senator Sass, and I think the Oxford English Dictionary is now a new word for next year, jackassery. I want to thank Tom Tillis. I don't, again, agree with his equivalencies on everything, but I see an earnest person trying to figure out how we can make sense of this place and return more to patriotism, less towards partisanship. And I've listened to every time he spoke, he's made appeals to those higher angels, and I'm grateful for that. I really do worry about where we are spiraling towards. I worry about hearings like this, where the majority of people on both sides, I think, were well within the zone, but I heard things that were just ridiculous and painful and hurtful. And I do worry, and I hope that maybe when the cameras are off and some of us can get together and talk about how do we repair and how do we heal. I have not resigned myself to the inevitability of this is where the United States Senate is going. And the collateral damage to this, and it's not all us, I think the Supreme Court has done enough damage to itself with its lax ethics rules, but the legitimacy of the court has sunk pretty dramatically over the last years. And I think a lot of it is because of the spectacle that we've seen here and now. And that really, really concerns me. Look, I think it was, I know it was President Lincoln who said, the world will little note nor long remember what we say here. And I know that's from my words as well. This is a frustrating experience to see this happen. But I want to make a couple points and then shift to my final point. I think we do real damage to our own agendas here as elected leaders when we so vilify each other that we create these caricatures. I made the mistake in one Supreme Court hearing, and it was not intentional, but even when it came out of my mouth, in talking about a Supreme Court justice, I used the word evil. I did not intend to do it, and if context, I think, might save me, but how horrible it is to describe another human being with terms like I've heard here, evil. I remember my governor, who was a Republican, my friend, was running for president, and the right had so vilified Obama, had so dehumanized him, that when my governor and Obama hugged after a natural disaster, it was used in campaign commercials against my governor, and he dropped over 10 points because he did the sin of somebody that we had so vilified, so demonized, that human interaction, that a hug is such a violation of our tribe that it actually hurt them. I sometimes see some of my friends that might run for president on the other side. I think I might foil their campaigns by going around hugging them. Because that's where we've gotten in America right now. We've so vilified each other. And that's why I just want to address the absurdity of the vilification of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Even the rhetoric I've heard used here, I kept writing things down. Judge Jackson is not an extremist. She is not out of the judicial norm. I've heard language, I won't read through all the attacks on her that I've heard in this hearing today, not to mention the previous days. I'm sorry, who does the American public want to believe? A bunch of elected senators or the independent folks that are out there? To say she's an extremist on crime belies the fact that she has law enforcement group after law enforcement group supporting her.
We want numbers, bro. We want numbers. Stop insulting black people. Stop insulting America. Ted Cruz presented statistics, numbers, actual data. Stop going to her feelings. I don't care about emotions and feelings and evil and hugs and love and all that Hope Obama bullshit. What numbers do you have to support your bullshit? Show me fucking numbers. Show me fucking data, you piece of shit. Where's the data to back up your fucking feelings and emotions? Booker, you dropped the fucking police reform bill. You full of shit. I'm tired of these motherfuckers. That's why I went in on Ken. That's why I went in on Ken. I'm tired of emotion. Show me data, Cory Booker. Where's the data? Where's the numbers to support your bullshit? The Democrats have been abhorrent this morning. Not one Democrat has shown not one statistical data to back up their bullshit. Each Democrat has repeated the same talking points without no data. Where is the statistics to back up your bullshit? Every Republican has shown numbers, data on top of data, case on top of case. If we don't go off of the fucking data, and what the fuck do we pick on? Emotion? Emotion? This is sad, man. And it's the lack of intelligence of the electorate of why they get away with this. The Democrats have not, 11 times, black woman, historical, black woman, historical. What about the data? What about her resume? We can't look at her resume because she's black. Biden did the same thing. If you don't vote for me, you're not black. If you don't vote for me, you're not black. They doing it to us again. They doing it to us again. Where's the data, Cory Booker? Her being black is not enough. Fuck.
So if you want to say that she is an extremistly soft on crime, then you're saying that about the FOP. You're saying that about the IACP. Go through all the organizations. If I hear another person trying to wrap themselves in the obvious that all 22 of us find abhorrent sexual crimes and somehow want to glorify themselves to being, hey, I'm a prosecutor. Well, both people on both sides.
No, you are abhorrent, sir. You are abhorrent. Don't take my word. He trying to take my word, y'all. He trying to take, I just said that. No, I said the Democrats are abhorrent, sir. Don't take my word, Cory Booker. Don't take my word. No, sir, you are abhorrent. Don't take my word. It has been a poor showing by the Democrats this morning. I just want some data, Cory. I don't want your emotions. I don't want how you feel about the subject. Bring up a case. Bring up a case, Cory, where you can show me why she should be Supreme Court Justice. Go somewhere in her resume, Cory, and show me why she should be Supreme Court Justice. The Republicans have shown me data. You, sir, are abhorrent.
I got my back full of prosecutors over here. And I see noble people that did the Lord's work of prosecuting these crimes as well. But here's the absurdity to say that somehow she is not strong against these cases. Again, these are just lies. A senator just said, I believe the guidelines are right. Well, obviously, Republican appointed judges don't agree with him, because the norm in many states is 70 to 80% of judges going before the guideline. And if that statement is correct, then why didn't you vote against every one of those Republican judges that was not following the guidelines, as most don't? You could try to create a straw man here, but it does not hold. And it's just frustrating to me to listen to people trying to create a caricature of a human being whose family is law enforcement, who is a parent, and who is well within the norm on these cases. And again, I'm an elected official just like my colleagues on the other side, so don't believe me. Believe all the victims' rights advocates that have written in on this issue. There are organizations that represent hundreds and hundreds of organizations on victims of sexual assault, women and children. Just, I don't need to read the horrific stuff that they deal with every single day, but God bless America. The National Children's Alliance, a national organization that works on behalf of children who have been sexually abused. They have 924 member organizations. All would concur with the a conservative magazine that called what my colleague and Senator Hawley is saying, that these things that he's saying are meritless, on the verge of demagoguery. And so I could go through all the things that balance the world out here, because you come in here and the way we talk about each other, the way we talk about a justice is so disrespectful. I respect the criticisms. I voted against Amy Coney Barrett. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but the way we talk about each other, the rhetoric that is so disrespectful, so much of a caricature, so far out of the lines of what independent groups and law enforcement and victim advocacies that support this candidate would say. Which brings me to the final point I want to make. I am hearing from people, not just Black women, but particularly Black women, who have been relating to me their stories about having to come into a room where you're more qualified than the people who are sitting in judgment of you, and having to endure the absurdities of disrespect that we saw Judge Jackson endure. The stories I'm hearing are replete from folks in all kind of jobs and all kind of experiences in their lives who are so qualified, so worthy, and what they've had to endure. And that's what struck a chord this week. I don't think, again, we are going to have our political substantive disagreements, but it was the treatment in some of these questions that triggered a hurt in so many people I know and have encountered. How could they create these caricatures? How could they create these exaggerations? How could they disrespect a person like her who's done everything right in her life and in her journey? How? How qualified do you have to be, double Harvard? How qualified do you have to be clerking at all levels of the federal judiciary? How qualified do you have to be 3 times confirmed by the Senate in a bipartisan manner? And so, Senator, I have to say, today is the birthday of a great poet named Maya Angelou. And so I'm just going to end with those words. Why does this poem strike a chord with so many Americans? Because they feel it to their bones. And so this is in honor of Maya Angelou and the next Supreme Court Justice of the United States of America. Happy birthday, Maya, Dr. Angelou. You may try to write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me down in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. Rise, Sister Jackson. Rise, Judge Jackson. all the way to the highest court in the land. And when we have that final vote, I will rejoice, ancestors will rejoice, and we will say, Lord, this is a day that you have made. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we all appreciate having had the
That's it. That's it. That's it. This nigga just ended with a Negro spiritual. This nigga just ended with a Negro spiritual. Hold on. A Negro spiritual, nigga? Oh my God. This nigga ended with a Negro spiritual. I can't believe he read Maya Angelou at the end. And they put him at the end for a reason. A Negro spiritual. He went to Maya Angelou's birthday. So that means he just took away everything, every bit of intelligence, every faculty you have as a man, as a citizen. He broke it down to the very last compound. She's a black woman. She's a black woman. She's a black woman. I just can't believe that he would degrade the argument to such a low frequency as a black man to say that we don't have any other factor of decision making, that somehow the primary focus in this decision that could be for the next 80 years, she could be on the Supreme Court. That what the Democrats wanted us to focus on today is the fact of her race and sexuality. And the last thing that the black senator said, who possibly will run for president one day, is a quote from a Negro spiritual in 2022. That was the most insulting shit. And I love Dr. Maya Angelou. I respect that poem, but still I rise. This monkey foot, she's married to a white man and she's being nominated for the Supreme Court. How high is she gonna go? Still I rise to where, Corey? She is high. She has risen. She has risen. The black woman has risen, Corey. It's so insulting. It's insulting to the black men incarcerated. There are more black men incarcerated in America than there are humans incarcerated in the entire globe. It's insulting to the prison pipeline. It's insulting to 70, 80, 90% of black boys at a third grade reading level not being able to read. It's insulting to the single fathers. It's insulting on so many levels to the entire community that we are so simplistic that we would make such a complex political decision solely based on race and sexuality. And that you would be able to move us with a fucking poem, not data, not an Excel spreadsheet, not a statistics, not one case record, a fucking poem. A fucking poem. You juxtapose a poem with fucking data. And you wonder why they don't treat us with respect. I'm very disappointed this morning. I'm very disappointed in these individuals. It's very sad.
I think it's necessary to judge this judicial nominee. So if there's nothing further, I'd ask that the committee stand in recess subject to the call of the chair.
Younger, but given the length of time, I put more emphasis on reading her opinions. And my conclusion is, and I think the best evidence of that, if you take a look at, read one opinion by the judge, I would encourage you to read Make the Road New York case, which was her case on immigration. Well written, but I think her true feelings about the limits of judicial power are expressed in that opinion. She was reversed by the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. I don't agree with the judge on where, based on her opinion, she draws the limits of judicial power. And I don't think she places as great an importance as I do on judicial restraint in a Madisonian system of checks and balances and separation of powers. And for that reason, I will be voting no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
But wait, she a black woman though. He must be racist. Yep. He must be racist. He gotta be racist. Yep. He gotta be racist. You didn't hear that poem? Y'all didn't hear that? He didn't hear the poem. Maybe if Cory Booker was a stand-up. See, Cory Booker was sitting down when he read the poem. Right? Cory Booker was sitting. Maybe if he read the poem, you know what I'm saying? Maybe if he read the poem, that would be better. Stand up, Cory, and read the poem. Because some people didn't hear you. Still I rise. Still I rise. Even when I'm the Supreme Court and I'm the First Lady, still I rise. Even when my men are incarcerated and my children are murdering themselves and can't read, still I rise. Fuck wrong with y'all. Street Doctor in the building. Street Doctor with the scoop and the alley-oop. Thank you for coming up and supporting, King. That's my king, man. That's my little brother right there, man. Three Kings podcast in the building, man. Three Kings podcast in the building. Let's go to the chat, man. He didn't even use a beat. Booker is not dumb. No, he's not dumb. He knows most of America is dumb, though. That's what makes me so upset. It happens on YouTube a lot. Red Supreme this morning was talking again about how black men in this space support people who don't do what we did here this morning. I work really hard to create compelling, provocative content that is enriching to my audience, and in droves, black men go watch the BS. Cory Booker knows the hearts and minds of black men. And I'm going to keep doing what I was called to do, but it's sad but true statement. This is a sad but true statement. And it's true on YouTube also. It's true on YouTube also. Thank you, bro. I'll be listening. I won't be able to see the chat. All right. My boy in the box. Everybody save and share. Live, very much appreciated. Thank you, everybody. So this afternoon, we going in on the malignant narcissist. Over the weekend, I had a panel. You got to go subscribe to all the Kings, man. You got to go subscribe to all the Kings. You got to go subscribe to the Street Doctor. Can somebody put Street Doctor link in the chat, please? You got to go subscribe to Street Doctor. You got to go subscribe to 2 Raw TV, because you got to catch all of the Three Kings episodes. The Three Kings is some of the most progressive content out here on YouTube. We've been breaking down this content from all areas. My brother, 2 Raw, was the first person to tell you about the double entendre of the joke. Last night on Kevin Samuels, or was it, I forget who I heard, Angry Man. Angry Man said his wife told him that Demi Moore, the joke had a double entendre. Angry Man did a show. Angry Man did my show. I'm not mad at Angry Man. I feel flattered that Angry Man did the same show that the Three Kings did. Last night, Angry Man talked about Candace Owens. My last video is at 150 views. We did a live reaction to Candace Owens. If you go look at Angry Man's last video, he had 1,000 people in the chat. He did a live reaction to Candace Owens. Now, Candace Owens pointed out the mental health issues with black men in black America. Let's go back to Ken. Let's go back to Ken. Let's go back to Ken. Now, that's the link, everybody. Let's go back to Ken's statement. Candace Owens pointed out the mental health issues with black men in America. I'll be honest. When I first listened to Candace Owens, I was upset. I had to go seek counsel. I say I'm perfect, I'm not right. When I first heard Candace Owens' statement, I was upset. I said, Candace Owens, you can't equate Will Smith to all black men. How can you say all black men have a mental health? So I went and sought counsel, right? And my big brother and my little brother said Candace Owens is correct. We have a mental health crisis amongst black men, and you've talked about it. After slavery, after Emancipation Proclamation, the mental health needed to fix the broken psyche of the needy black person was not done. See, in order to keep us as property, in order to keep us as indentured servants, there was things done to us on a socio-political level to separate us as families, to separate us as people, to keep us as servants, to keep our frequency low, to keep us in a subservient fashion, right? There were things done to us. So after we were released from this level of servitude, there should have been psychological measures taken to rebuild and say, hello, Negro, the way we've been treating you is not conducive to an actual healthy family and society for everyone, not just you, but that wasn't done. So Candace Owens said, black men in America are dealing with some real mental health issues. She wasn't nice in the way she said it. She wasn't. She cut. But Candace Owens was correct. We do have a mental health crisis in America. And because of our not being honest, because of our emotions, because like Perfect, because black men are so sensitive about this mental health issue, people like Cory Booker are able to manipulate us with poems. Cory Booker and Tim Scott are two black senators who had championed the police reform bill after 18 months of Black Lives Matter protests, after George Floyd being murdered and a knee on his neck for 8 minutes. What amounted to was the police reform bill. Police reform bill championed by Tim Scott and Cory Booker. It dealt with the chokehold, the no-knock warrants, the police funding, all of the things that we discussed in those protests for 18 months after all those murders and abuse of black males and black men. We asked, does Black Lives Matter? And we got a policy, a Senate legislation. You should know, to be an intelligent black father, to be an intelligent father, not just black, because now white men are supporting police reform bill. Now white men are supporting the no-knock warrant being removed. But they're a little bit late. And Tim Scott and Cory Booker dropped the ball. Tim Scott and Cory Booker were allowed to drop the ball on police reform. Yeah, you wasn't singing a poem then, Cory Booker. You didn't sing a poem then. Where was your poem when police reform? The chokehold is still legal. The no-knock warrant is still legal. Cory Booker, does Black Lives Matter? Cory Booker, do black men's lives matter? Cory Booker, as you sing, Still I Rise, can you say that about me? Can you say that about my son, Cory Booker? What about my son, Cory Booker? Tim Scott, still can my son live? So Street Doctor is being honest. I had to be honest. You know, it was tough. Candace Owens said some honest things. Angry Man, I'm not mad at Angry Man for doing the content. Everybody, it's YouTube. You could do whatever content you want to do. I feel proud that we did the content that Angry Man does my shows a lot. And the thing is, he does it after I do it. I don't know if it's an original idea, but I know my content, because I did it first, there's no question that my content was an original idea. So I take it as a compliment that someone like Angry Man is doing the same content as me. Black Male Advice TV, he had a show this morning. Today we're going to talk about the malignant narcissist, right? So we're going to talk about Jada Pinkett and the malignant narcissist, and a conversation that developed on the Three Kings podcast on 2 Raw TV Uncuts channel. And girl behind the mic gave a great testimony. I gave my testimony. NBR production came up. It was a very powerful stream. You need to go check it out. But as we had our discussion about narcissistic mothers and people being trapped in a narcissistic relationship, I'm a man. I gave my perspective in a narcissistic relationship with my narcissistic mother. Girl behind the mic is a woman. She gave her perspective of growing up in a relationship with a narcissistic mother and the downstream effects. So in that discussion, we learned some things. So it's Mental Health Monday, and the subject matter today is going to be Ain't No Love Mondays. Ain't No Love Mondays. So that's going to be in about 3 hours. I got to go to lunch with my wife. Shout out to the Latina Patriot for the Cash App. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Latina Patriot for the Cash App. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. That's such a blessing. You know, you got to feed these babies. So thank you to Latina Patriot for the Cash App. Thank you, everybody, for viewing. Tonight at 3 o'clock, I might push it back to 3:30, but come back tonight, you guys, at 3 p.m. We going in on the malignant narcissist. Ain't No Love Mondays. We're going to discuss this narcissist vibe. We're going to discuss this mental health. And the whole goal of the discussion is to help people. You know, I'm speaking from experience of growing up with a narcissistic mother. Anybody who would love to join the panel, I would ask you to please join the panel and share your testimony. Hey, before we get out of here, man, let's say our prayers, man. Before we get out of here, let's say our prayers, man. Let's say our prayers before we get out of here, man. Let's say our prayers. Oh, man, G.O.D. G.O.D. Thank you so much for this blessing this morning. Thank you for giving us the opportunity once again to come before the audience and share a message, Father. Thank you for divinely inspiring the message. I pray that all your listeners and all the people are blessed who are failed through the chat. I pray that they have a blessed and a successful day. I pray success for all their endeavors. I pray a covering over the audience. I pray a covering over the podcast. I pray a covering over all the listeners and a blessing unto those. Pray for safe passage on your highways and byways. Thank you for your many blessings, Father. I ask that the message be divinely inspired and a blessing unto those who listen. We ask all these blessings under your name. Amen, amen, amen. Oh, man. Thank y'all so much for hanging out. Thank y'all so much for coming through. It's been a powerful morning. Is there a link to that video on Candace Owens? Yeah, man. I actually have a playlist. I have a playlist, Willy Wonka, 6 p.m. Eastern time, and I have a playlist on the Will Smith. So go to my channel and check out my playlist. But let me bring up the link for you right now. I'll bring up the link for you. Yeah, it was on my channel. So I did a reaction. There's a link to the reaction video that I did. Candace Owens has her own podcast. Candace Owens has her own podcast. So it's worth subscribing and checking out her podcast. You know, even though, you know, I have my issues with Candace Owens, she's a very intelligent. I watch her a lot. She's very intelligent, and she has a lot of intelligent things to say on a lot of subjects. So I'll be remiss to say that she doesn't have some redeeming content, and she brings value to the space, most definitely. So please check her out. Did you ever watch the video where Candace Owens stand some sort of trial being called racist? Yeah, when she first came out, she got a lot of flack for being racist. You know, since then she's got married. She has a she's in an interracial marriage. I myself am in an interracial marriage. I think she had a baby. I think she got a baby. So she's married. She's in an interracial marriage. I'm in an interracial marriage. So, you know, I don't have anything against Candace Owens. You know, I don't think Candace Owens is a racist. You know, sometimes, you know, she has strong opinions. It's America. She's very provocative, and that's why I think she's a great content creator, you know. And I to be honest, I pattern myself after her in a lot of ways, you know. I seek to be provocative. I seek to be compelling. You know what I mean? I seek to be intelligent and knowledgeable about the subject matter that I speak about. And I also look to give unique perspectives on the things that I talk about. So, you know, I respect what she does because we do a lot of similar things. So her being a woman, it doesn't really matter, or her being black doesn't really matter to me. That's what we talked about all day today. Candace Owens to me is an intelligent political commentary. That's how we should view Candace Owens. I don't look at her for her race. I don't listen to her for her sexuality. She says some very intelligent things, right? And if we can look past sex and race sometimes, I think we could get a better conversation. You know, Candace Owens had made a great point. And what I did was, with my show, I researched why Black men are having a mental health crisis. And what I did is I found a psychologist who had went through the same thing I went through in life. And he was not a psychologist. He was street doctor said, I want to go to therapy, right? But my ego won't let me go. Most Black men, let's read this again. Most Black men feel like this. Most Black men feel like this. This is the show that we did. This is the show. I liked her statement. Definitely a mental health problem. I think I need to see a counselor, but my ego won't let me go, honestly. So how does street doctor, someone, a king in every aspect of God, how does he go see somebody who's not from his environment and can't relate to that, and they actually help him? Well, the psychologist said, we need Black men to be psychologists, and we need Black men to be able to talk to people like street doctor who relate to him, to be able to flesh out these things. So this week and this issue, we've done a lot of helping people. What's up, bro? We got 2 Raw TV in the building, man. 3 Kings podcast in the building, man. What's up, man? How you doing, man? Yo.
What up, bro? Hey, I probably got a little lag going on. I was late to your show, man. I just got off the plane, man. I just had to get off the airplane.
Oh, wow, man. You on the plane? This man out there big balling, man. What you doing, man? Going on a plane? You just was off a week. Now you're on the plane, man. What's going on? I hope it's a good thing, man.
Yeah, I'm helping a buddy out of mine. He just bought a truck. And the truck out here, the truck was out in Nebraska, in Omaha, Nebraska. So I just, he ain't got no CDLs, but he started his own trucking company. So he broke me off a pretty penny to come out here. He flew me out here. So.
Oh man, look at that, man. Let me give you some more props for that, man. My brother out here on a business trip, man. He ain't messing around. My brother on a business trip, man. He in business class, man. We ain't playing 3 Kings, man. Gorillas in the chat, man. Gorillas in the chat, man. We ain't playing, man. He out here on a business trip in Omaha, Nebraska, eating big steak, man. Omaha steak, man, all day. I don't eat meat, but if you're in Omaha, man, get you a big old Omaha. They supposed to got good steaks, man. So go steakhouse, man. Go big. You're on a business trip, man. It's all on the bench, man. Omaha Steakhouse, man.
Hey,
picking up a truck.
You already know I'm a business trip or not. Y'all know what time it is.
Hey, check this out, brother.
Gotta get that.
Check this out. Hey, check this out.
Hey, okay, I tried.
It was my anniversary this weekend. So me and the wife, she was running around spending all my money up. And we going all over Northern California.
Oh, man. How you like
it? It was great. Check this out, man. She made me this. Check this out. Oh, shit. So 7-year anniversary.
Okay. Hey, that's dope.
So we see.
Man, that's what I'm talking about. It be the small things, bro. It be the small things that do something, man. That mean everything, bro.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So we was running around. I was in the gas station. I don't know if you know if they got these in the where I live, but we stopped at the gas station and I seen these. I ain't never seen them before. I was like, give me that right there. I gotta try these. My brother said this. Hey, this is the shit. I'm fucking with this, man. This is cigarillo. I didn't know it was a cigarillo. I'm fucking with these, man. I'm on this right here. And the apples and bananas, man. This is what I'm on, man. Hey, but Tura, I'm about to shut it down, man. I can barely hear you. We're gonna come back this afternoon, man. At 3 o'clock my time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. I don't know if you can jump on, bro. But jump on if you go ahead.
I'll say I'll get a boy.
All right, you guys, did y'all hear that? Too Raw just said, Too Raw just came through with that robotic shit, man. Hey, everybody pray for Too Raw. Safe passage for my brother. Thank you, God, for giving my brother safe passage, man. This is why we pray. Pray. You got to stay prayed up, man. Prayers go up, blessings come down. I didn't know my brother was in the plane, but I stayed praying for my loved ones, man, so that God keep them, man, always. So I just thank God, man, and keep up this healthy practice, exercise, diet, prayer. I didn't know my brother was on the plane. Where you at, dog? Oh, man, I got to go. My dog is running around the house acting a fool. Man, hey, salute everybody. I see y'all this afternoon. And, hey, when the vote come in, we might go live again. They in recess right now. So when the vote come in, we'll go live. And it's pretty sure that she's gonna be confirmed. Like Ken Ross said, it's pretty sure she's gonna be confirmed. So depending if the vote come in while we live, we could do like a news breaking news, you know, Ketanji confirmed, but we gonna play it by ear. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna play it by ear. When and if she get confirmed, we'll come back. But at 3 p.m., we're gonna talk about the malignant narcissist, right? Oh, you never heard that, Willy Wonka? Prayers go up, blessings come down. Oh, my dog is in the kitchen. Go! I'm going to whoop your butt. Every time I try to be nice to the dog play me. Every time I try to be nice to the dog play me. Every time. Have a great day, bro. Salute everybody. I'll see y'all later, man. Kid seeing red with the lugs, man. Kid seeing red with the lug. Salute the Ken, man. Salute the Ken. Everybody else should have a playlist up right now. Everybody else should have a playlist up right now. If you on a laptop, Two Rogers got a laptop. If everybody else besides Ken, you should be on the playlist right now. Right now, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 10 tabs open right now. That means you could be watching me 9 other times. You could open up the same amount of tabs as me. I'm doing research. You could hit the plus button, open up another tab, open up YouTube, open up Perfect Timing Podcast, open up a playlist, hit play, bring the volume down, watch me, let the playlist play. Perfect Timing racks up hours. You get in the habit of doing this to build up AdSense. You know what I'm saying? Come on, everybody. You should have on multiple playlists right now. Open up a tab. Can't See in Red is the only one. Can't See in Red is on a dial-up right now. Can't See in Red is on the dial-up. He on the AOL AIM phone. When he's on the internet, nobody in the house could use the phone. He has to take the phone off the hook. Ken is the only one in the chat that got a house phone. Ken actually got a house phone. That's his new nickname. Ken See in Red, a.k.a. house phone. This is my brother Ken See in Red, a.k.a. house phone. Ain't nobody else got no house phone. Shout out to my brother house phone in the chat. When Ken is on, he has to take the phone off the hook. Some of the people don't even understand what I'm talking about because they ain't never seen a house phone in their life. Shit. They ain't never seen a... Oh, shit. Oh, shit. They ain't never seen a house phone in their life. So that's my brother Ken, a.k.a. house phone. Whenever he on the internet, no one in the house could use the phone. His whole family is stuck in 1988. They still got green linoleum. They got a green refrigerator. It's green and yellow in their kitchen right now. Green and yellow tile, Tupperware, green linoleum, and a house phone, an orange plastic house phone. He got to take the house phone off the hook to be on the internet. So Ken cannot open up multiple tabs. He still has an AOL AIM dial-up internet. Bitch! He got dial-up internet. He can't open up multiple tabs. You could open up multiple tabs. No excuse. No excuse. No excuse. Open up multiple tabs. Get that playing in the background. Get that playing in the background. Get that playing in the background. Shout out to everybody, man. I love y'all. Have a blessed day. I'll see y'all later.